when a regular Tuesday afternoon at a Walmart in Emeryville, California, turned into something nobody in that store would ever forget. It started the way most big moments do, quietly, with one person just trying to do their job. Her name was Deja, 23 years old. She had taken 2 buses to get there that morning. She had a coffee stain on her sleeve from a cup that spilled on the second bus. She was tired, but she showed up. She always showed up. She was working Register 7 when a customer walked up, dumped his groceries on the belt without looking at her, and decided that the price on one item was wrong. Deja did everything right. She stayed calm. She offered to get someone to check. She kept her voice steady even when his voice got loud, even when he said something that made the woman behind him flinch. And then the store manager walked over. He did not ask Deja what happened. He did not check the screen. He did not look at a single piece of evidence. He listened to the customer for less than a minute, and then he fired Deja, right there, in front of everybody, in front of the whole line, in front of the entire store. Deja reached up, took off her Walmart lanyard with both hands, and set it on the belt. Carefully, like it meant something. She picked up her bag. She said one word, just one, "Okay," and she started walking toward the exit. The store went quiet, the kind of quiet that happens when everyone around something wrong says nothing. She was 5 steps from the door. 4, 3, and that is when the front entrance opened from the outside. And the very last person anyone expected to walk into a Walmart on a random Tuesday afternoon walked through that door. He was not supposed to be there. He had a game in less than 5 hours. He had a routine. He had everything he needed to just walk past, grab what he came for, and leave. He did not leave. He stopped. He turned around. And what happened in the next 60 seconds? What he said, what the manager did, what Deja did, and the thing he whispered to her that nobody could hear, the thing she kept in her pocket for 3 weeks and did not tell a single person, is one of the most quietly extraordinary things to happen in a parking lot store in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. The manager thought it was over. He had no idea it was just beginning. Watch the whole video, because what comes next changes everything. And the biggest part of this story is the part nobody filmed. The Walmart Supercenter on Shellmound Street in Emeryville, California, does not look like a place where anything important happens. It sits just off Interstate 80, sandwiched between a Target and a furniture store, close enough to the San Francisco Bay that on clear mornings you can sometimes smell salt water in the parking lot. The store is big and bright, the way all Walmarts are big and bright. Fluorescent lights running the full length of the ceiling, wide aisles stacked high on both sides, the low hum of refrigerator units from the grocery section mixing with the beeping of registers up front. It smells like plastic and bread and floor cleaner. On most days, the Emeryville Walmart is exactly what it looks like. An ordinary store, where ordinary people buy ordinary things and go home. October 24, 2023, starts out as one of those days. By 1 p.m., the Tuesday afternoon crowd has settled into its usual rhythm. A mother with a baby on her hip moves slowly through the cleaning supplies aisle, reading the back of every bottle with focused, exhausted eyes. 2 high school boys drift through the electronics section without buying anything, picking up headphone boxes and setting them back down. An elderly man named Raymond, a retired postal worker who has been coming to this Walmart every Tuesday for 3 years because Tuesday is when they restock his brand of low-sodium crackers, pushes his cart through the cereal aisle at the pace of someone who has nowhere particular to be and has decided to be grateful for that. At the front of the store, 8 registers are open. Most have short lines. The cashiers move with the practiced ease of people who have done this job long enough that their hands work independently of their thoughts. Scan, bag, smile, next. Register 7 is staffed by Deja Simmons. Deja is 23 years old, and she has worked at this Walmart for 2 years and 7 months. She was hired at 20, 2 weeks after she moved from her mother's apartment in East Oakland to a smaller apartment, one bus ride closer to the store. She took the job because it was steady, and because the hours were predictable enough that she could build her community college schedule around them, slotting her Tuesday and Thursday morning classes in before her afternoon shifts. She is not someone who describes herself as remarkable. If you asked her to list what she is good at, she would say, remembering things, staying calm when things go wrong, and making sure the bags are balanced so they do not fall over when customers carry them to the car. These are not the things people put on posters. They are not the things anyone notices, usually, but they are real, and they are hers. The regulars notice. Raymond always comes to register 7 when Deja is working, because she remembers that he does not like his crackers put in the same bag as anything cold. A woman named Gloria, who comes in every other Friday for groceries, once told Deja she was the only cashier who ever asked how her granddaughter was doing, and meant it. There is a little boy, maybe 7 years old, who comes in sometimes with his grandmother and who always looks longingly at the snack display near the registers. Deja has, on 3 separate occasions, scanned an item incorrectly and corrected it in the little boy's favor. She does not think of this as stealing. She thinks of it as balance. She sends $400 home every month to her mother, Cheryl, who lives in a 2-bedroom apartment in East Oakland, with Deja's younger siblings, Marcus, who is 12, and Priya, who is 9. Cheryl had knee surgery in late June, after years of the kind of dull, constant pain that working mothers push through, until one day they cannot. The recovery has been slow. She cannot work right now. She cannot take the kids to school on bad days. She is doing her best in the particular way that mothers always do their best, which is quietly and without asking for recognition. Deja knows this. It is the last thing she thinks about before she falls asleep, and the first thing that wakes her up in the morning. This particular Tuesday morning, Deja woke up at 5:50 a.m., not because her alarm went off, but because she had been lying awake since 5:15, running through the essay she had submitted at 1:58 a.m. for her introduction to social work class, trying to remember if she had cited the third source correctly. She showered, dressed, made a piece of toast she ate standing up, and left the apartment by 6:45 to catch the first of 2 buses. The second bus was crowded. She got a seat near the back. Her coffee, poured into a travel mug she has owned since high school, the one with the Warriors logo faded almost to invisibility, tipped when the bus lurched at a stoplight on San Pablo Avenue, and the lid, which has never sealed quite perfectly, allowed a thin stream of coffee to run down the side of the mug and onto the sleeve of her uniform shirt. She looked at the stain. She blotted it with a napkin from her bag. It faded but did not disappear. She looked out the window. The bay was flat and silver in the early morning light. A pelican sat on a pier post. A jogger moved along the waterfront path below. She thought, "It is fine. It is just a stain." Keep going. She kept going. By 1 p.m. she has been on her feet for 4 hours. Her lower back aches in the specific way it always does on long shifts, a slow tightening she has learned to breathe through without showing it on her face. She has scanned 214 items in the last hour and a half. She has said, "Have a good one," 38 times, which she counts sometimes when she is tired, not as a complaint, but as a way of staying present when her body wants to drift. She is good at her job. This is simply true. At 1:07 p.m., she finishes with a customer buying school supplies and a birthday card. She straightens the belt. She looks up and smiles at the next person in line. The next person in line is Gerald Purcell. Gerald is 51 years old. He is wearing pressed khakis and a tucked-in collared shirt on a Tuesday afternoon, which is the kind of detail that does not mean anything by itself, but that Deja notices the way she notices most things. He sets his items on the belt without looking at her, a box of protein bars, a bottle of multivitamins, a canister of coffee grounds, 3 boxes of crackers, the expensive kind, the kind with seeds, a snack mix that comes in a tall red box with gold lettering. Deja begins scanning. Gerald picks up his phone and scrolls while she works. He does not put the phone down when she gives him the total. 47.83, she says. Gerald looks up from his phone. He looks at the screen. He puts the phone in his pocket. That's wrong, he says. Deja says, I'm sorry, the price is wrong. He points at the tall red box with the gold lettering. The snack mix. That was on sale. $2.49. The sign said $2.49. Deja looks at the screen. The item scanned at $3.99. I can call someone to check the price on the floor, she says. It should only take a couple of minutes. I don't want to wait a couple of minutes, Gerald says. It said $2.49. Just change it to $2. I'm not able to change a price without confirmation, Deja says. Her voice is patient. It is the patient voice she has built up over 2.5 years, the one that does not waver even when part of her wants to. If the sign said $2.49, we will absolutely honor that. I just need someone to verify. Gerald sighs the sigh of a man who considers his time uniquely valuable. He says, this is ridiculous. Deja picks up her phone to call the floor associate. Gerald says, I cannot believe how incompetent this place is. The woman standing behind Gerald in line shifts her weight. She is holding a basket with 2 candles and a bag of rice. She looks at Deja. Deja does not look back. She is waiting for the floor associate to pick up. Gerald says, louder now. Are you even listening to me? I am, Deja says. I'm getting someone to check right now. Gerald says a word then. One word, low and fast, aimed at Deja like it is nothing. Like it is the kind of word you are allowed to use when you are inconvenienced, and the person inconveniencing you does not seem worth being careful around. The woman with the basket closes her eyes for 1 second. Just 1 second. Then she opens them. Deja does not react visibly. She is very still. Her hand holding the phone is steady. Inside, she is somewhere else entirely. Somewhere far away, calm and cold. The place she goes when she needs to not let something show on her face. She has been to this place before. She knows the way. That is when Dale Hutchins walks over. Dale has been the store manager at this Walmart for 4 years. He is 38, medium height. With a clipboard he carries the way some people carry authority. Not to use it exactly, but to make sure you know it is there. He keeps the break room schedule on that clipboard. He keeps the monthly performance review notes. He keeps, in a mental list he would never write down but has never lost, the names of employees he has decided are problems. He heard Gerald's voice from 12 feet away and walked over the way a person walks towards something they have already decided the shape of before they arrive. He looks at Gerald first. Gerald begins explaining, quickly, with the confidence of a man who expects to be agreed with, that the price on the snack mix was listed incorrectly, and that he has been waiting unnecessarily, and that the cashier has been unhelpful. Dale does not look at Deja while Gerald speaks. This is the first thing. He does not look at her. He does not ask her anything. He does not look at the screen, or pick up the phone to call the floor himself, or ask to see the receipt from the shelf. He listens to Gerald for 43 seconds. This is a number Deja will remember later, in the way you remember strange specific details from the worst moments of your life, because she finds herself counting and she cannot stop. Then Dale looks at her. He says, Deja, I'm going to need to let you go. She stares at him. Effective immediately, he says. His voice is smooth, practiced. The voice of a man who has done this before and told himself each time that it was the right call. Customer satisfaction is non-negative. You understand that. Non-negotiable, she says quietly. Right, he says. She stares at him a moment longer. She is waiting maybe for the next part. The part where he says just kidding or pending review or we'll discuss this later. The part where there is a process, where there is a question asked, where there is anything other than this, which is nothing. That part does not come. Deja reaches up and takes her Walmart lanyard off with both hands. The motion is careful, almost ceremonial. She holds it for one breath. Then she sets it on the conveyor belt, gently, the way you set something down when you want to prove to yourself that you still have control of at least this one small thing. She says, "Okay." Just that, one word, quiet and clean. She reaches under the register and picks up her bag, the one with the Introduction to Social Work textbook inside, and the Warriors mug with the faded logo, and a folded piece of paper with notes for a quiz she has on Thursday. She holds it against her chest. She does not look at Gerald. She does not look at the woman with the basket. She does not look at Raymond, who has drifted to the end of the nearest aisle and is standing very still with both hands on his cart, watching with the expression of a man who has seen unfair things in his life and has never gotten used to them. She starts walking toward the exit. The store is not silent, exactly. The fluorescent lights still hum. The refrigerator units still breathe. A child somewhere near the toy section laughs at something. The ordinary sounds of an ordinary Tuesday continue without interruption, because the world does not pause for the small devastations, the ones that happen at Register 7 in the middle of the afternoon to people whose names the world does not know yet. Deja walks. Her shoes squeak very slightly on the polished floor, the way they always do. She is 7 steps from the door. 6, 5, and then the front door opens from the outside, and a tall man in a gray hoodie and a low baseball cap walks in, carrying nothing, looking around the way someone looks around when they are trying to remember where something is in a store they have been to before. He takes a basket from the stack by the door. He looks left, then right, then starts walking toward the back of the store. He passes Register 7. He passes the lanyard sitting on the belt. He passes Dale Hutchins, who is already turning away. He passes Gerald Purcell, who is tucking his receipt into his wallet. He takes 4 steps past the register, and then he stops. Later, people will ask him what made him stop. In interviews, in passing comments, in the quiet after moment that follows a thing like this, they will ask, "What did you see? What made you turn around?" He will say he does not fully know. He will say it was the way she walked, the way she was holding her bag, the particular straightness of someone who has decided not to let their face show what their chest is doing. He will say he has seen that walk before. He knows what it means. He turns around. Deja is 3 steps from the door. He says, "Hey, Deja?" She stops. She turns. She looks at the man in the gray hoodie, and he looks at her, and for a moment, neither of them is anything other than 2 people standing in a Walmart in Emeryville on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Then he says, "Can I ask what just happened here?" And Deja Simmons, who has held it together through all of it, through the word and the 43 seconds and the lanyard and the one quiet okay, looks at this stranger and feels something in her chest loosen, just slightly. The way a knot loosens when someone finally touches it the right way. She says, "I got fired for doing my job." He nods. Once, slowly. He does not say "I'm sorry," or "that's terrible," or "someone should do something." He turns back toward the register, and he starts walking. Nobody in the store knows who he is yet. In about 45 seconds they will. And nothing, not for Dale Hutchins, not for Gerald Purcell, not for Deja Simmons, not for this ordinary Tuesday, will be the same after that. He walks the way he plays. That is the thing people will say afterward, the ones who were there, the ones who watched it happen from their places in line, or from the end of aisles, or from behind the pharmacy counter. They will say, "He did not rush. He did not puff up. He did not perform. He simply moved toward the thing that needed to be moved toward, with the particular calm of someone who has learned, through years of pressure, Through playoff games and elimination nights and moments where everything depended on one shot, that panic is a choice, and that he stopped making that choice a long time ago. Steph Curry covers the 12 feet between the exit and register 7 in about 8 steps. He is still nobody to most people in the store. A tall man in a gray hoodie. A customer who seems to be walking somewhere with purpose. An interruption to the ordinary rhythm of a Tuesday afternoon that has not yet revealed what kind of interruption it is going to be. Dale Hutchins has his back mostly turned. He is already moving on. Clipboard in hand, mind on the next thing. The way a man moves on when he has decided a situation is finished. Gerald Purcell is tucking his wallet into his back pocket. Neither of them sees Steph coming until he is already there. "Excuse me." 2 words. Quiet. Not rude. Not aggressive. The kind of excuse me that expects to be heard. Dale turns around. He takes in the gray hoodie, the joggers, the cap pulled low, the face he cannot quite place, but which has the particular arrangement of features that sits in the back of the brain and says, "I know you from somewhere." He does not place it yet. He says, with the automatic authority of a man on his own floor, "Can I help you?" "I think you can," Steph says. "I just want to understand what happened here." With the young woman at the register. Dale's expression does not change much, but something behind it shifts. A small tightening. He says, "That's an internal matter." "I understand that," Steph says. "I'm just asking as someone who saw it." "Sir, I appreciate your concern, but..." "She was helping a customer," Steph says. "The customer had a question about a price. She offered to get someone to check. That's what you're supposed to do, right?" "That's the right move." Dale says nothing. "So I'm trying to understand," Steph continues. "What part of that was the problem?" His voice is even the whole time. There is no edge in it. Or rather, the edge is so controlled that it does not sound like anger. It sounds like a question. A very serious question being asked by someone who genuinely expects an answer. Dale opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. He says, "The customer expressed dissatisfaction with the service." Steph tilts his head very slightly. "He expressed dissatisfaction." "Yes." "Okay." Steph is quiet for a moment. "And did she do something wrong while he was expressing that?" Dale says, "I made a judgment call." "Based on what?" Steph asks. "Did you ask her what happened?" Silence. Not long, maybe 3 seconds. But in a quiet store, 3 seconds of a manager not answering a direct question is a very loud 3 seconds. The woman with the basket, who is still standing in line because she has not moved since Dale said the word terminated, is watching with her lips pressed together. Raymond, at the end of the cracker aisle, has set both hands on the handlebar of his cart. A cashier, 2 registers over, has stopped scanning and is staring openly. Dale says, "I don't need to explain my decisions to..." And then the teenager near the magazine rack says it. He is 16 years old. His name is Jordan, and he has been standing in the magazine section for the last 6 minutes. Not reading anything, just existing in that teenage way of occupying space while time passes. He has his phone in his hand. He is the kind of kid who watches basketball the way some people breathe. Automatically, constantly, as a basic function of being alive. He has been looking at the man in the gray hoodie since he walked past the magazine rack. Looking and looking and looking, because something in his brain has been ringing a bell that his mouth has not caught up to yet. And then it catches up. Jordan says, out loud, in the specific volume of a teenager who has not learned to filter his surprise, "Oh my God, that's Steph Curry." What happens next is not loud. That is the unexpected thing. The thing nobody quite prepares for when they imagine a moment like this, because the imagination always adds trumpets, some swelling of recognition, some dramatic reveal, some Hollywood beat where the crowd gasps in perfect unison. But what actually happens is quieter than that, and somehow bigger. One voice says it, then another, a woman near the self-checkout kiosks who turns and stares and brings her hand to her mouth. Then a third, from deeper in the store, someone who heard Jordan's voice and looked up from a shopping list. Then a child, the same child who laughed near the toy section 2 minutes ago, tugs the sleeve of the adult beside her and says, with the complete unfiltered confidence of a 7-year-old, "Daddy, that's the basketball man." And the store, not all at once, but in that rolling, wave-like way of a crowd waking up, turns. Steph Curry does not look around when they recognize him. He stays exactly where he is, looking at Dale Hutchins. Dale Hutchins's face does a thing that human faces do when they receive a piece of information that is too large to process smoothly. It goes very still, then rearranges itself through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, recognition, a flash of something almost like disbelief, and then, underneath all of it, like sediment settling at the bottom of a glass, dread. It is a specific kind of dread. The kind that comes not just from being caught in something, but from a sudden, full-body understanding of the exact size of the thing you have been caught in. Steph Curry, 4-time NBA champion, 2-time league MVP, the all-time leader in three-pointers. The man who redefined what a basketball player could be, who turned a gym in Davidson, North Carolina, into a launch pad for the most decorated shooting career in the history of the sport. 60 miles an hour on the freeway, going past his face on a billboard outside Chase Center. That man is standing at Register 7 in Dale's store, looking at Dale, waiting for Dale to answer a question that Dale has not answered. And there are, Dale counts without meaning to, at least 7 phones pointed at him right now. Probably more, growing by the second. Gerald Purcell, who has been standing to the side with his bag of groceries, takes one step backward, then another. He is doing the very human thing of trying to become smaller without actually leaving. Steph turns then. He does what Dale did not do. He turns to Deja. Deja has not moved since she stopped walking. She is still near the door, still holding her bag against her chest. She looks like someone watching a building being constructed in a place where there was nothing yesterday, not quite believing the speed of it, not sure yet where it is going, not ready to trust that it will stand. Steph walks toward her. He does not wave her over. He goes to her. That distinction will matter to Deja later, in the quiet of her apartment, when she replays it. He came to where she was standing. He did not ask her to come back into the space that had just swallowed her. He closed the distance himself. He says, low enough that it is meant for her and not the room. "I'm Steph. I'm sorry for what just happened. Can you tell me the whole thing from the beginning?" Deja looks at him. Up close, he is somehow both exactly what she expected from the screens she has seen him on and completely different. He is a real person, standing in a real store, with a real expression on his face. And the expression is not celebrity concern, not performance, not the careful look of someone choosing their words for an audience. It is the look of someone who is actually listening, already, before she has said anything. She says, "He came to my register. He had a question about a price. I followed the right steps. I offered to check. He got angry. And then," Steph says, "and then my manager came over." She pauses. "He didn't ask me anything. He let me go." Steph is quiet for a moment. "In front of everybody," Deja adds. The way she says it is not dramatic. It is very flat and very honest, the way people describe the worst moments, without decoration, because the decoration would feel disrespectful to the actual weight of it. Steph nods. He says, "Stay right here." He turns back toward the register, toward Gerald Purcell, who has now bumped gently against a promotional display of Halloween candy and stopped retreating because there is nowhere further to go. Steph looks at Gerald. Gerald is a man accustomed to being the most certain person in a room. He has opinions and a pressed collar and the deeply held belief that when he is displeased, The people around him are obligated to fix it. He has moved through the world with this belief for 51 years, and it has mostly worked out fine. It is not working out fine right now. He is looking at Steph Curry, and Steph Curry is looking at him. And Gerald has the sudden, uncomfortable feeling of being a very small thing, observed by something much larger. Not threatening exactly, but clarifying. The way sunlight clarifies. Steph says, perfectly pleasantly, "The price on that snack mix. You sure it said $2.49? Gerald opens his mouth, closes it. A man near the front registers. A floor associate named Ben who heard the commotion and has been watching from behind a cart of returned items for the last 3 minutes, speaks up from his position. He is 20 years old, a little nervous, but apparently deciding this is a moment that calls for honesty. He says, I actually stocked that display this morning." He stops, clears his throat. The sale sign is on the aisle end cap. The snack mix isn't in that section. It's in the regular snack aisle. The sale's on a different brand. 11 people hear him say this clearly. 53 people will describe hearing it, later, in the comments section of various videos posted before the end of the day. Gerald looks at Ben. Then Gerald looks at his grocery bag. Then Gerald looks at the floor. He says, in a voice that has lost almost all of its pressed collar certainty, "I may have been looking at the wrong sign." The store does not erupt, not yet. What happens is a different sound. The sound of an intake of breath held by multiple people simultaneously. The sound of a room that has been waiting for a piece of information and has finally received it, and is now absorbing what that means. Steph Curry looks at Dale Hutchins. Dale is gripping his clipboard with both hands. He is still standing at Register 7, and the lanyard is still on the belt beside him, and the fluorescent lights are still humming above, and nothing about the physical environment has changed, except that everything inside it feels entirely different. Steph says, and this is the moment, the one that will be played and replayed, clipped and captioned, translated into 7 languages and posted on platforms that did not exist 10 years ago. He says, so she did everything right. Not a question. Dale does not answer immediately. Steph says it again, still calm. Still not unkind, but with a weight behind it now, the weight of a man who knows exactly what he is saying and exactly what he expects the response to be. She did everything right. Dale Hutchins exhales through his nose. He looks at the clipboard, then at the lanyard, then at Deja, standing near the door, holding her bag. He says, I acted without all the information. Yes, Steph says. You did. And then Steph does something that nobody expects, and which will be the detail that journalists focus on the least, and that Deja will think about the most, for the rest of her life. He steps back. He does not say what Dale should do. He does not demand. He does not perform for the cameras, does not look at the phones, does not set his jaw in the way of someone making a statement. He steps back and he is quiet, and the quiet is its own kind of pressure, the pressure of a room full of people, and a truth that has been laid out on a conveyor belt, neatly, undeniably, like items waiting to be scanned. The pressure of waiting for someone to do the right thing without being told to. And Dale feels it, every single ounce of it. He looks at Deja. He picks up the lanyard from the belt. He walks toward her. It is not a graceful moment. Nobody should expect it to be graceful. It is the moment of a man who made a fast, petty decision, and is now standing in the consequences of it under fluorescent lights, with a room full of people watching, and at least a dozen phones recording. And grace was never going to be available in those conditions. He says, Deja, I made a mistake. I'd like you to come back. Full pay, effective today. Deja looks at the lanyard in his hand. She looks at his face. She does not move for 5 full seconds. In those 5 seconds, the store is so quiet that Raymond, the retired postal worker at the end of the cracker aisle, can be heard shifting his weight. and the small squeak of his sneaker on the polished floor sounds very loud. Then Deja reaches out and takes the lanyard. She does not thank Dale. She does not smile at him. She holds the lanyard the way she set it down, like it means something, like it belongs to her, and has always belonged to her, like it was never really his to take. She says, "Okay," the same word as before, but a completely different sentence. The applause starts with Jordan, the teenager, which is probably right. 16 years old, a basketball in his heart, standing in a magazine section of a Walmart on a Tuesday, and he starts clapping before he has even decided to. Then the woman with the basket. Then Ben, the floor associate, who puts both hands together with the specific enthusiasm of someone who has been waiting to do that. Then the woman at the self-checkout, who brought her hand to her mouth. Then Raymond, slowly, with the gravitas of an elderly man who has decided something is worth clapping for. It moves through the store like warmth moves through a cold room, from person to person, gradual and then complete. Gerald Purcell does not clap. He is looking at his shoes. But later, 3 days later on a Thursday morning, a Walmart employee will hand Deja a sealed envelope with her name written on the front in careful, slightly uncertain handwriting. Inside will be a letter. 4 sentences. An apology that is imperfect, the way real apologies are imperfect, because the person writing it is not practiced at this and knows it, and says so. It will not fix what was said. It cannot fix that. But it will be real, which will count for something. Deja will keep the letter. She will not post it. She will fold it and put it in the drawer with her community college syllabi and her mother's medical paperwork. The drawer where she keeps the things that are true and hard and hers. Steph lets the applause happen. He stands in it the way he sometimes stands in the applause at Chase Center after a big shot. Present, aware, grateful for it, but not consuming it. It is not his. He knows that. After a moment, he walks back toward Deja. She is putting her lanyard back on. Her hands are not completely steady, he notices. She is holding it together, and she is succeeding, but the success is costing her something, and he can see that. He says, "Are you okay?" Deja looks at him. And in the specific honesty of the moment, the kind of honesty that gets into the small spaces between your ribs when something big has just happened, and you have not had time to build the walls back up, she says, "I don't know yet." He nods. He understands that answer. He has given it himself, in different rooms, under different lights. He picks up his basket from the floor where he left it. He holds out his hand to shake hers. She shakes it. And then he leans in, slightly, and says something quiet. Something meant only for her. Something that the cameras cannot catch because the cameras are too far away and his voice is too low. Whatever it is, it takes about 12 seconds. When he straightens up, Deja is looking at him with an expression that is not quite any one thing. Not gratitude exactly, not surprise exactly, not the look of someone who has been given something, but more the look of someone who has been shown something they already had, in a mirror they did not know existed. She nods once, slowly, like a promise. He taps the side of his basket, picks up the birthday candles he hasn't bought yet, still needs to find them, still in aisle 12, still 6 miles from the Chase Center and a game in 4 hours, and turns toward the back of the store. He walks the way he walked in, unhurried, unperformed. At the door of aisle 12, he glances back once, not at Dale, not at Gerald, not at the phones, at Deja. She has returned to register 7. She is scanning something for a customer. She is doing her job, the one she is good at, the one she never stopped deserving to do. Her head is up. Her hands are steady now. He turns into the aisle and disappears. By 3:47 p.m., just over 2 hours after Gerald Purcell set his groceries on the belt, the 16-second clip from Jordan's phone has been viewed by more people than currently live in the city of San Francisco. By the time Steph Curry parks his car at Chase Center and walks into the building for pre-game warm-ups, it has been viewed by more people than live in the entire Bay Area. He does not look at his phone much before games. He has a routine, a quiet pre-game ritual that the Warriors staff know better than to interrupt. He stretches. He shoots. He gets into the specific mental place that 4 championships and thousands of games of basketball have taught him to find. But a Warriors media coordinator stops him in the hallway outside the locker room and says, "Steph, Twitter." He glances at the screen she holds out. He sees Deja's name trending. He sees the clip, the 11 seconds of him saying she did everything right, with the fluorescent lights above, and the lanyard on the belt beside them. He hands the phone back. He says, "Good," and keeps walking toward the locker room. What nobody knows, what the Twitter trend does not know, what the million views do not know, what even the Warriors media coordinator does not know, is what Steph Curry said to Deja Simmons in those 12 quiet seconds at Register 7. What nobody knows is that those 12 seconds have already changed the direction of her life. It will just take a little while for the rest of the world to find out how. And Deja Simmons, who takes the last bus home that night, who sits in the back the way she always does, who watches the city move past the dark window. Deja has a piece of paper in her jacket pocket. She put it there before she left the store. She wrote something on it in the break room, during her last 10-minute rest of the shift. She has not shown it to anyone. She is not ready yet. But she knows what it says, and she knows what it means. And she holds it through the whole bus ride home, through both transfers, through the walk up the stairs to the apartment where her mother is asleep on the couch, and Marcus has left his homework on the kitchen table, and Priya's drawings are still taped to the refrigerator. Held it the whole way, pressed against her chest, like something that might fly away if she loosens her grip, like something worth keeping. The piece of paper stays in Deja's pocket for 6 days. She does not unfold it in front of anyone. Not her mother, not her co-workers, not the woman at the community college financial aid office she visits on Wednesday morning to ask about deferring one of her course payments by 2 weeks. She carries it through Tuesday night and Wednesday and Thursday and all the way to the following Monday, the way you carry something fragile, aware of it always, adjusting around it, making sure nothing presses against it too hard. On Wednesday morning, she wakes up and checks her phone and sees that her name has been mentioned in an ESPN segment. She watches 12 seconds of it on her cracked phone screen while sitting on the edge of her bed in the dark, before her alarm goes off, before the apartment wakes up. Anchor she has seen on television her whole life says her name, Deja Simmons, out loud on national television, with a photograph of Register 7 behind him on the screen. She watches it twice. Then she puts her phone face down on the mattress and sits very still for a moment. Then she gets up and makes breakfast for Marcus and Priya, because it is Wednesday, and her mother's physical therapy appointment is at 8, and someone needs to get the kids to school. She scrambles eggs. She makes toast. She packs 2 lunches. She walks Priya to the corner where the school bus stops, stands there until the bus pulls away, waves at the back window where Priya's face appears briefly, small and round, and already turned towards something else. She goes to work. She scans 247 items. She says, "Have a good one," 41 times. She goes home. This is the thing about Deja Simmons, that the 16-second clip does not show and cannot show. She does not stop. She has never had the option of stopping. The world kept moving on the afternoon of October 24th, the same way it kept moving on every other afternoon. The buses ran, the bills arrived, the eggs needed scrambling. And so Deja keeps moving with it, because standing still has never been something her life allowed her to do. But the piece of paper stays in her pocket. And at night, in the quiet after Marcus has gone to sleep, and Priya has gone to sleep, and her mother has taken her medication, and the apartment has settled into the particular stillness of a place where people are resting hard, because the day was hard. Deja sits at the kitchen table and unfolds it. She reads what is written there. She folds it back up. She puts it in the drawer. And she thinks about a boy from Charlotte, North Carolina, who was told he was not enough, and who kept going anyway, and who changed everything. Here is what most people do not know about Steph Curry's childhood, and what all of it has to do with a Tuesday afternoon in Emeryville. His father, Del Curry, played 15 seasons in the NBA. He was a sharpshooter, precise, reliable, the kind of player coaches trust in important moments. Growing up, Steph sat courtside at games and watched his father play, and absorbed something from those years that went deeper than basketball. He absorbed the understanding that talent is not the same as certainty, that the people around you will draw conclusions about what you are before you have had the chance to show them, and that the only answer to that, the only real answer, is to keep showing up. When Steph was being recruited out of high school, Virginia Tech, his father's school, offered him a preferred walk-on spot. Not a scholarship, a walk-on spot, meaning, you can come here, but we are not committing to you. We do not believe enough in you yet to put our name on it. He went to Davidson instead, a small school, a school that most basketball fans could not have located on a map in 2005. He went there and he worked, and in 2008 he led Davidson to the Elite Eight of the NCAA tournament, knocking out Georgetown and Wisconsin, and Gonzaga along the way, scoring from distances that made commentators pause mid-sentence to recalibrate what they thought they were seeing. And still, when he came out for the draft in 2009, the questions did not stop. Too small, too slight, ankles that had already needed surgery, a player from a small school with no real competition. The knock on him was persistent, and it came from people who were paid to know what they were talking about, which made it carry more weight than it deserved. 6 players were taken before him. He sat in the green room at Madison Square Garden on draft night, June 25, 2009, and watched 6 other names called. His family was there. His father, who had sat courtside and watched his son become something extraordinary, sat there quietly and did not let his face say what his chest was probably saying. Pick number 7, Stephen Curry, Davidson College, to the Golden State Warriors. He was polite. He shook the commissioner's hand. He held up the Warriors jersey for the photograph. He smiled. Inside, he was keeping count. The way Deja counted 43 seconds. The way people always count the things they are told they should forget. He did not forget. He used it. This is the specific thing about Steph Curry that cannot be separated from everything else he has done. The doubt did not break him, because he had already decided, somewhere very deep and very early, that the people doing the doubting were not the ones who got to decide. They got to draft. They got to write columns. They got to question. But they did not get to decide. He decided. He showed up to the Warriors' practice facility before the lights were on. He left after the cleaning crew had come and gone. He invented a training routine for his handles so specific and so relentless that assistant coaches would bring new players to watch him warm up, just so they could understand what the word dedicated actually looks like when it has been made physical. In the 2015-16 season, Steph Curry had the greatest shooting season any basketball player has ever had. He shot 45.4% from three-point range on 11.2 attempts per game. He was unanimously voted the league's most valuable player, the first unanimous MVP in the history of the award. Every single voter, every single one, put his name first. The same player the draft had made wait through 6 picks. The same player the scouts said was too small. The same ankles they said wouldn't hold. On February 4, 2021, in Madison Square Garden, in the city where he sat in the green room 12 years earlier and waited for his name to be called, Steph Curry hit a three-pointer in the third quarter against the Knicks and became the all-time leader in made three-pointers in NBA history, surpassing Ray Allen's record of 2,973. He fell to his knees on the court, not performing, just arrived. At a place that had taken 12 years of showing up before anyone said he would. That is the man who walked into a Walmart on Shellmound Street and saw a young woman put a lanyard down like it meant something. He recognized it immediately. Not the specific circumstances. Not the register or the manager or the price dispute. He recognized the posture of it. The particular way a person holds themselves when they have been dismissed. When they have decided not to let the dismissal touch their dignity. When they are walking away from something that was not fair, and they know it, and the knowing is quiet and contained, and very, very heavy. He had never done it in a Walmart. He had done it in draft rooms and scouting reports, and practice gyms where coaches looked at him the way Dale Hutchins looked at Deja, like a decision already made. He knew that walk. He turned around. This is the part of the story that gets complicated. Because Steph Curry is not, and he would be the first to say this, a perfect person with a perfect history, who moves through the world without contradiction. He is a man. He has had moments of grace and moments of frustration, and moments where he did not say the thing he should have said because the situation was too complicated, or the cost was too high, or he was simply too tired. He has a platform, an enormous, unprecedented platform built from championships and records and the particular cultural weight of being great at something in the modern age of social media. And he has not always used it perfectly. There are things he has stayed quiet about that people wished he would speak on. There are times he has chosen the careful answer over the honest one in press conferences, and the basketball writers noted it, and they were right to note it. He is not a symbol. He is a person. The difference matters. But on this particular Tuesday, in this particular store, watching this particular young woman hold herself together in the specific way that costs everything and shows nothing, he did not choose the careful answer. He put the basket down, and he turned around and he walked toward the thing that needed walking toward. And here is the part that nobody talks about in the viral clip. The part that gets lost in the clean narrative of the applause and the lanyard returned and the manager's retreat. It cost him something to do it. Not much. Not compared to what it cost Deja, but something. He had a game in 4 hours. He had a ritual. He had a routine built over 15 years of professional basketball that his body depended on, that his mind depended on, that kept him calibrated for the specific, extraordinary thing he was about to go do in front of 18,000 people. Every minute in that store was a minute borrowed from that routine. He stayed anyway. He stayed because the calculation was simple. What kind of person do you want to be is a question that does not wait for a convenient moment. 4 hours and 12 minutes after Steph Curry left the Walmart, he walks onto the court at Chase Center. The building is already loud. The Warriors faithful, the particular congregation of fans who have been showing up to this building since it opened in 2019, who wore the gold and blue through the lean years and the championship years and the rebuild years, are loud in the way they always are before a home game. The lights are down. The music is playing. The court gleams under the overhead lights. Steph goes through his warm-up. He has been doing a version of this warm-up since he was 17 years old. It is muscle and memory and something else, something quieter. A conversation he has with himself every single time before he plays. A settling in. Tonight, the settling in takes longer than usual. Not because of the Walmart, not exactly, but because of what he said to Deja, the 12 quiet seconds, and the expression on her face when he finished. That expression he has been carrying around all afternoon like a stone in his chest. Not a heavy stone, not a bad stone. Just the weight of having said something true to someone who needed it, and not knowing yet whether the truth will land somewhere real, or whether it will stay in the pocket with a piece of paper in a small apartment in Oakland, folded and refolded until the crease goes soft. He shoots 53s in warm-up. He makes 44 of them. What happens during the game is this. Steph scores 32 points. He hits 4 three-pointers. He has 9 assists and 4 steals. The Warriors beat the Sacramento Kings by 11, and the Chase Center crowd is loud and warm and satisfied, and it is by any measure a very good night of basketball. But the moment everyone will talk about is not a shot. It is in the fourth quarter, with the Warriors up 9, under 2 minutes remaining. The Kings call a timeout. Both teams go to their benches. The crowd noise drops to a comfortable roar. A courtside reporter named Melissa Ahn, who has covered the Warriors for 6 seasons and who has learned, in that time, that Steph Curry gives better answers when you do not try to be clever, leans in during the timeout and asks him, directly, with no preamble, the Walmart thing. What did you say to her? Steph takes a drink of water. He caps the bottle. He looks at Melissa the way he looks at good questions, not evading, not performing, just thinking genuinely for a moment before speaking. He says, something personal. Melissa waits. He says, I told her something that somebody once told me, when I needed it. He pauses. I'll let her tell it, if she wants to. And then the buzzer sounds and the timeout ends, and he stands up and goes back onto the court and hits a pull-up 3 from the logo that makes the building lose its mind. Melissa Ahn posts the quote at 9:43 p.m. By midnight, the quote has been shared 280,000 times. By Thursday morning, it is the subject of a segment on 3 separate morning shows. By Friday, a journalist from the San Francisco Chronicle has called the Walmart PR department, called the district office, and placed 2 calls to a number associated with Deja Simmons, which is actually her mother Cheryl's number, because Deja does not give her real number out, has never given it out, and the internet's best attempts at finding it have landed them at the one place she specifically asked her mother not to talk from. Cheryl, to her enormous credit, says, I don't know what you're talking about, to every single caller. She knows exactly what they are talking about. She tells Deja about the calls that Friday evening, while they are washing dishes side by side in the small kitchen. Cheryl sitting on a stool, because her knee still makes standing for long periods painful, handing Deja each dish to dry. Deja says, What did you tell them? Cheryl says, I told them, I don't know what they're talking about. Deja looks at her mother. Cheryl looks back. There is something in Cheryl's face that is beyond pride, past the ordinary border of it, something older and quieter. The look of a mother who has watched her child carry things no child should have to carry, and carry them anyway, without complaint, without breaking, and who has arrived at a moment where the world has finally caught a glimpse of what she has known for 23 years. She says, Whatever he told you, whatever is on that paper. She hands Deja a bowl, wet and warm. Keep it a little longer. It's yours. Don't let them turn it into a headline before you're ready. Deja dries the bowl. She says, How did you know about the paper? Cheryl says, Baby, I'm your mother. The following Monday, 6 days after the Tuesday, something happens that nobody in the story has seen coming. Dale Hutchins is sitting in his office at the back of the Emeryville Walmart. It is 11:20 in the morning. The store opens at 7, and he has been here since 6:30, and he is on his 3rd coffee, and he has not slept especially well in 6 days, which is its own form of accounting. He is looking at his computer. On the screen is a document he has opened and closed 7 times this week, without finishing it. It is an incident report, not for the district, not required, not asked for. It is a document he has been writing for himself, in the slow, uncomfortable way of a man doing something he knows he should do, precisely because he does not want to do it. At the top, in the subject line, he has typed 2 names, Marcus, Leela, 2 employees he let go in the 3 months before October 24th. Fast, quiet, no cameras, no Steph Curry in the aisle, just 2 people who came to work and then did not come back. He has been trying to write down what happened in both cases. Really write it down. Not the version in the official record, but the version that is true. The version where he was tired and the situation was easier to end than to navigate, and there was no one watching. So the only cost was to people who had not given him any reason to treat them that way. He has gotten 3 sentences in. He closes the document. Then he opens it again. He thinks about Deja's face when she said okay the second time. The difference in that word. He starts typing. That same Monday morning, Deja is on a bus. Not her usual bus. A different one, going in a different direction. She is going to the community college to talk to her advisor about something she has been considering for the last 6 days. Something she has not told anyone, not even her mother. Something she has been turning over in her mind, the way you turn over a stone, looking at the underneath of it, checking what lives there. She has the piece of paper in her pocket. She has read it so many times now that she does not need to unfold it. She can close her eyes on the bus and see every word in the exact handwriting she pressed into it with a pen from the break room at the end of her shift, the night it all happened, while the store hummed around her and she sat alone at the break room table and wrote down the 12 seconds before they could fade. She reads it with her eyes closed, riding the bus through Oakland in the morning light. She mouths the words silently, and then she opens her eyes and looks out the window and makes a decision. The city moves past. A school, a barber shop, a church with a painted mural on the side wall, a woman with her arms wide, surrounded by children, surrounded by color, a crossing guard helping a small group of kindergartners across an intersection, holding a stop sign, taking her time, making sure every single child is safely across before she steps back. Deja watches the crossing guard until the bus carries her past. She thinks, that is what it looks like. That is what it actually looks like when someone uses what they have to protect someone who needs it. She reaches into her pocket and holds the piece of paper. She is not ready to share it yet, but she is getting ready to be ready. And that, for right now, is enough. 3 days later, on a Thursday, Deja's phone rings with a number she does not recognize. She almost does not answer. She answers. And the woman on the other end says a name, a foundation, a street address in Oakland, a reason for calling. And Deja sits down on her kitchen floor without deciding to. And the television is on in the next room, and Marcus is at the table doing homework with his headphones in, and the world continues its ordinary motion all around her, while something completely extraordinary is offered to her, in a voice that is warm and unhurried, and does not require her to answer right now. She says, "Can I think about it?" The woman says, "Of course." Deja hangs up. She looks at the kitchen floor for a long time. Then she looks at the refrigerator, at Priya's drawings taped in a row, crayon suns, a house with a red roof, a figure with long arms that is probably supposed to be Deja herself, labeled in Priya's careful 9-year-old handwriting, "My sister who works hard." Deja reads it. She has read it 100 times. It has been on the refrigerator for 2 months. But tonight it says something different. Tonight it says, "You already know the answer. You have always known the answer. You were just waiting until it was safe enough to say it out loud." She picks up her phone. She calls the number back. She says, "I'll do it." And somewhere across the city, in a building on 81st Avenue, where children come every afternoon to eat and read and be safe, a light is on, waiting. The light on 81st Avenue stays on past 9 o'clock most nights. This is something the neighborhood knows. The children who come through the doors of the Eat, Learn, Play Center after school know it. Their mothers know it. The man who runs the corner store across the street knows it. He has watched that light from behind his counter for 4 years, since the center opened in 2019, and he has come to think of it the way sailors think of lighthouses. Not a destination, but a signal, proof that someone is still there. Still working, still meaning it. The Eat, Learn, Play Foundation was built by Steph and Aisha Curry out of a very specific kind of frustration. The frustration of living in proximity to need and having the means to address it, and understanding that the distance between those two things is almost entirely a matter of will. In 2019, they partnered with the Oakland Unified School District to open the center on 81st Avenue, in the deep East Oakland neighborhood that has been simultaneously one of the most vibrant and most under-resourced communities in the Bay Area for decades. The center provides free meals, breakfast, lunch, and after-school snacks, to children who might otherwise go without. It provides tutoring, reading programs, safe spaces to be young in a city that is not always gentle with its young. Since opening, it has served hundreds of thousands of meals. Hundreds of thousands. That number sits differently depending on where you are standing when you hear it. If you are standing in a board meeting looking at a slide, it is impressive. If you are standing in the kitchen at 6:45 in the morning, watching volunteers unload bread from a delivery truck, it is something more than impressive. It is the sound of a lot of mornings that could have gone wrong and did not. Tamara Wells has been the Foundation's Community Outreach Coordinator for 3 years. She is 41 years old, has a master's degree in public administration from Cal State East Bay, and has spent the last decade working in the specific, unglamorous, essential space between community need and institutional response. She is very good at her job. She is especially good at finding people, not famous people, not credentialed people, not people with the right letterhead, but the right people, the ones who show up, the ones who remember names. When Steph called the Foundation the morning after the Warriors beat the Sacramento Kings, he did not describe Deja Simmons in elaborate terms. He said, "I met someone yesterday. She does everything right, and nobody was watching. We should be watching." He gave Tamara the name. He said he thought there might be a role. He said to take her time and to do it right. He did not say hire her. He said, "Look." Tamara looked. She watched the clip 17 times, not the famous 16 seconds, but the longer version that Jordan eventually posted to his own account, the 94-second version that begins before Steph turns around and ends after the applause, the version where you can see Deja's face more clearly. She watched the way Deja stood at the door, the way she walked back, the way she took the lanyard, the way her chin did the thing that chins do. Then Tamara did something no journalist had done. She did not call the Walmart. She did not call the PR department. She drove to East Oakland on a Wednesday afternoon and walked into a community college and asked the financial aid office if there was a student named Deja Simmons enrolled, and if so, what she was studying. The financial aid office, correctly, told her nothing. But in the hallway outside, she ran into a young woman carrying a social work textbook and a Warriors mug with a faded logo. They looked at each other. Tamara said, "Are you Deja?" Deja said, "That depends on who's asking." Tamara smiled. She said, "I think you're exactly who we're looking for." Deja said yes on a Thursday. She showed up to the Eat, Learn, Play Center on a Tuesday, exactly 1 week after the Tuesday that changed everything, as if the calendar were making a point. She wore her good jacket, the dark green one borrowed from her mother, and she brought a notebook and 2 pens because she did not know if pens would be provided, and she did not want to be the person who showed up without a pen. She took the 57 bus to International Boulevard, then walked 6 blocks. She passed a mural of Tupac. She passed a barber shop where 3 men were sitting outside in folding chairs, arguing cheerfully about something she could not quite hear. She passed a woman selling tamales from a cart and made a note to stop on the way back. She stood outside the center for a moment before going in. It was an ordinary-looking building, a converted school annex, single-story, painted a warm terracotta orange, with a mural running the length of the front wall. The mural showed children of every background reaching towards something above them: a book, a basketball, a paintbrush, a plate of food. At the top of the mural, in large letters, Every child deserves a full plate and a full chance. Deja read it twice. Then she pushed open the door and went in. What she found inside was not what she expected. She had been preparing, on the bus ride over, for something polished. For the version of a foundation that exists in press releases, gleaming surfaces, branded tote bags, people in blazers speaking in complete sentences about impact metrics. What she found instead was noise and light, and the specific beautiful chaos of 40 children eating lunch simultaneously. The main room was large and warm, with long folding tables covered in colored plastic tablecloths, little pots of crayons at intervals between the lunch trays, windows along one wall that let in the October light. Children between the ages of 5 and 12 occupied every chair. They were eating sandwiches, fruit cups, cartons of milk, and talking and laughing and occasionally throwing small pieces of bread at each other in the way that children throw things when they know they are safe enough to be silly. 3 staff members and 4 volunteers moved through the room, opening milk cartons, mediating minor disputes, crouching down to help a small boy who was struggling with a sealed packet of crackers. In the corner, a little girl of about 6 was carefully drawing something with a purple crayon, while her lunch went mostly untouched. A volunteer noticed, sat beside her, and began talking to her softly. Within 30 seconds, the little girl was eating and drawing simultaneously, the volunteer holding the paper steady so it did not slide. Deja stood in the doorway and watched this for a moment. She thought about Priya. She thought about Marcus at 12, who still had that same quality of needing someone to sit beside him sometimes, not to solve anything, just to be there while he figured it out. She thought about the years when there was not always enough for lunch, when her mother stretched things in the quiet, invisible ways that mothers stretch things, and Deja was old enough to notice, but young enough that noticing was all she could do. She thought, this is a building full of children who do not know yet how much this moment will matter later. She thought, someone should be writing this down. Tamara found her in the doorway. She said, first impression? Deja said, it smells like crayons and soup. Tamara said, that's exactly right. That's the official scent of this place. We're thinking of making it a candle. Deja laughed. It was the first full laugh she had given in 9 days. It came out a little rusty, like a door that has been closed for a while, but it was real. Tamara walked her through the center. The reading room, where bookshelves ran floor to ceiling and a cluster of 3rd graders were doing homework with a college student tutor. The kitchen, where 2 women were already prepping for the next day, enormous pots, the good kind of organized chaos, the smell of something with garlic. The small garden plot out back, where a raised bed of winter vegetables was being tended by an after-school group of 10-year-olds who were, at this exact moment, having a heated debate about whether the carrots were ready to pull. Deja took notes. She wrote down everything, not because she was told to, but because she is the kind of person who writes things down. Because she knows that the thing not written down is the thing most likely to be lost. Tamara watched her take notes and said nothing about it. Good sign. That was a very good sign. They sat down in Tamara's small office at the back of the building. A room with 2 chairs, a desk covered in organized stacks of paper, and a corkboard on the wall with photographs pinned all over it. Children, families, community events. A ribbon-cutting ceremony from 2019 with Steph and Aisha in the center, smiling, scissors held aloft. Tamara said, here is what the job actually is. Not the title, not the official description, the actual job. Deja put her pen on her notebook. Tamara said, there are families who use this center every day whose stories nobody has ever asked about. Not reporters. Reporters call when something dramatic happens. I mean their real stories. Why they come. What it means to them. What they were doing before this place existed. We want to collect those. Carefully. Respectfully. In their own words. and then figure out how to share them in ways that bring more support to the people who need it. Deja said, "You want someone to listen." "Yes," Tamara said, "and to remember what they heard, and to know what to do with it." Deja was quiet for a moment. She said, "Can I ask you something?" Tamara said, "Please." Deja said, "Why me? I'm a cashier. I'm a community college student. I don't have a degree in communications or journalism or anything close to that. There are people who are trained for this." Tamara looked at her steadily. She said, "There is a regular who comes to your register every Tuesday because you remember he doesn't like his crackers near anything cold. There is a little boy whose grandmother brings him in, and you have quietly adjusted his total 3 times because he looks hungry. There is a woman named Gloria who tells you about her granddaughter, and you ask questions because you actually want to know the answers." She paused. "We didn't learn any of that from the video. We learned it from the people who noticed. The ones in line behind you. The ones who have been watching you do this for 2.5 years." Deja looked at the desk. Tamara said, "You are already doing the job, Deja. We just want to give you the room and the resources to do it bigger." Deja did not cry in the office. She waited until she was outside, until she had thanked Tamara and shaken her hand and walked back through the main room, where lunch was winding down now and the children were moving toward the reading room and the little girl in the corner was still drawing. Deja paused beside her on the way out. She looked at the drawing. A house, a tree, a figure with long arms. The little girl looked up and said, "That's my mom." Deja said, "She looks strong." The little girl nodded seriously. "She is," she said. "She lifts things." Deja said, "My mom lifts things too." She walked out into the October afternoon. She made it half a block before she stopped next to a parked car and stood there with her hand on the roof of it, not because she needed the support, but because her body needed a moment to be still while something large moved through it. She stood there for about 45 seconds. Then she straightened up. She walked to the tamale cart on the corner and bought 2, one for herself, one to bring home to her mother, and ate hers standing at the corner, because she was suddenly very hungry, in the way you get hungry when something in your chest that has been tight for a long time finally loosens. She pulled out her phone. She called Cheryl. Cheryl picked up on the second ring and said, "Well?" Deja said, "I think something good is happening, Mom." Cheryl was quiet for a moment. Then she said, in the voice she uses when she does not want Deja to hear that she is feeling something large, "Tell me." What Deja does not know yet, what she will not know for another 11 days, is that Steph Curry has not told anyone what he said to her. Not Aisha, not his agent, not the Warriors media team, which has been managing the ongoing story of the Walmart moment with its usual careful attention to his public image. He has given one quote, something personal, something someone once told me, and has added nothing since, despite 7 separate requests for elaboration. The thing he said to Deja has remained, for 11 days, between exactly 2 people in the world. And in 11 days, when Deja Simmons stands on a stage on 81st Avenue, she will be the one to tell it. But that is 11 days away. Right now, Steph Curry is sitting in a film session at the Warriors practice facility in San Francisco, watching footage of the Memphis Grizzlies defense in preparation for a game on Friday. The room is dark. The screen is large. His teammates are around him, Klay Thompson beside him, eating an apple with the focused intensity he brings to almost everything. Draymond Green in the back row, making small marks on a notepad. The film session ends at 4:15 p.m. Steph stays in his chair for a moment, after the others stand up and move toward the exit. He looks at the blank screen. The Warriors performance analyst, a young man named Kevin who has worked with the team for 2 seasons and who has learned that Steph sometimes needs a moment after film sessions the way some people need a moment after church, stands quietly near the door. After about 30 seconds, Steph stands up. He says, to no one in particular, or perhaps to Kevin, or perhaps to himself. Did you know that the right person for a job sometimes gets found in a Walmart? Kevin blinks. Steph picks up his bag. He says, never mind. See you tomorrow. He walks out. Kevin stands in the empty film room for a moment, looking at the blank screen, thinking about that sentence. He will be thinking about it for a while. On the evening of the same Tuesday that Deja visits the center, 1 week to the hour after she set a lanyard down on a conveyor belt in Emeryville, she sits at the kitchen table with the piece of paper. Marcus is beside her, doing his homework. His headphones are around his neck tonight, not on his ears. He is working through a math problem with the specific labored breathing of a 12-year-old who does not want to ask for help, but is clearly close to asking for help. Deja watches him for a moment. Then she says, "Do you want me to look at it?" Marcus says too quickly. "No." Then, "Maybe." Then, "Yes." She pulls his notebook toward her and looks at the problem. It is a word problem, the kind with a train leaving one city and another train leaving a different city, and the question of where they will meet. She reads it twice. She draws a small diagram in the margin without being asked. She talks through it with him, step by step, not doing it for him, just building the path until he can see where it goes. Marcus looks at the path, follows it, arrives at the answer. He looks up with the expression that 12-year-olds try to suppress because it feels too close to joy, and joy feels too close to vulnerable. The expression of having understood something. He says, "Oh, that's easy." Deja says, "It is now." He goes back to his homework. She looks at the piece of paper on the table. She picks it up. She reads it one more time, though she does not need to. She is reading it the way you visit a place before you leave it, not to learn anything new, just to feel it fully one last time before the feeling changes shape. She folds it carefully. She puts it back in her pocket, and then she thinks about what it is going to feel like to say these words out loud, in front of people, in the voice that Steph Curry borrowed from someone who said it to him once, and has carried it ever since. She thinks, it is going to feel like the train arriving. She thinks, it is going to feel like the answer you could always see once someone drew the path. 11 days. 11 days until the stage, until the room full of people, until Tamara Wells introduces her and the moderator leans into the microphone and the crowd of 200 leans forward as one. 11 days until Deja Simmons says, out loud, what Steph Curry said in 12 seconds at Register 7, in the space between the applause and the exit, while the fluorescent lights hummed and the lanyard was warm in her hand. But something is going to happen before the stage. Something that nobody in this story sees coming. Not Deja, not Tamara, not Steph, not even Dale Hutchins, who is sitting in his office right now with a document open on his screen and 2 names at the top and 3 sentences written and a cursor blinking in the silence, waiting for him to find the rest of the words. He is about to find them. And what he does with them next will be the last piece of this story. The piece that makes everything that came before it mean something different than it did before. The piece that nobody voted for. The piece that nobody filmed. The piece that happens quietly, in the dark, when the store is closed and the cameras are gone, and the only witness is the conscience of a man who is finally, imperfectly, late, but trying. Dale Hutchins types the 4th sentence at 11:47 p.m. The store has been closed for nearly 2 hours. The parking lot outside his office window is empty, except for 2 security lights casting orange circles on the asphalt, and a shopping cart that someone left at the far edge of the lot, tilted slightly to one side, going nowhere. The fluorescent lights in the main store are dimmed to their overnight setting. Not off, just reduced. A kind of half-sleep the building does every night between closing and opening, breathing slowly in the dark. Dale is the only person here. He does not usually stay this late. He has a house in Pinole, 20 minutes north on the freeway, where his wife Linda is probably already asleep, and where his 14-year-old son Caleb leaves his basketball shoes in the middle of the hallway every single night, despite being asked not to, and where the refrigerator makes a sound around midnight that Dale has been meaning to have looked at for 3 months. He has a life outside this office, a real one, a life that has nothing to do with clipboards and performance reviews and the particular loneliness of being the person who makes the hard calls. That is what he has always called it, the hard calls. Sitting here at 11:47 p.m., with 4 sentences on a screen and 2 names at the top of a document nobody asked him to write, he is beginning to understand that the hard calls and the wrong calls are not always different things. That sometimes the hardest part of a decision is not making it. It is sitting with it afterward, in an empty store, under dimmed lights, when there is no customer to manage, and no district report due, and nothing left to hide behind. The 4th sentence says, "I did not give Marcus or Lila the chance I gave Deja." He reads it. He reads it again. He does not delete it. Marcus Reyes was 20 years old when Dale let him go in August 2023, 2 months before Deja, 2 months before the Walmart moment, 2 months before the cameras. Marcus had worked at the store for 14 months in the stockroom, arriving at 5 in the morning to receive deliveries, moving pallets, organizing backstock with a methodical precision that the overnight supervisor, a woman named Greta, had noted 3 times in informal check-ins as exceptional. He did not call in sick often. He did not complain. He had the quality that Dale claimed to value most in employees. He showed up, and he did the work without needing to be told how. In early August, a discrepancy appeared in the stockroom inventory. 17 units of a health supplement were logged as received, but could not be located on the shelves or in backstock. The number was small, retail value under $200. The cause was almost certainly a logging error, the kind that happens in busy receiving environments dozens of times a year and is typically resolved with a recount and a corrected entry. Dale did not do a recount. He called Marcus into his office. He presented the discrepancy as a problem that required explanation. Marcus, who was 20 years old and had never been accused of anything in his professional life, became visibly nervous in the way that innocent people sometimes become nervous when accused, which is to say, he did not perform his innocence correctly, did not have the practiced calm of someone who has navigated this kind of conversation before, and therefore looked, to Dale's already decided eyes, like someone with something to hide. Dale let him go for what the paperwork called inventory irregularities. Greta, when she found out, said, "That boy did not take anything." She said it to Dale directly, in the hallway, without raising her voice. She said, "You know that." Dale said, "The numbers don't match." Greta looked at him for a long moment. Then she walked back to the stockroom without saying anything else. She has not spoken to Dale about anything that is not strictly operational since that day. 3 weeks after Marcus was let go, a recount found the 17 units. They had been mislogged on arrival and placed in a secondary stockroom section under the wrong SKU. The error was in the receiving system, not with Marcus. A correction was entered into the inventory record. Marcus Reyes was not called, was not offered his job back, was not told about the recount. He found out because Greta texted him a photograph of the corrected entry from her personal phone on a Sunday afternoon, because she believed he deserved to know. Marcus did not come back to the store. He did not call Dale. He found another job, overnight stocking at a grocery store in Richmond, longer hours, lower pay, a commute on 2 buses. He told Greta, in a text she has saved and read many times since October 24th, that he did not feel angry anymore, that he had decided to use the energy for something better. He was 20 years old. He had decided not to feel angry anymore. Dale types this, all of it, every piece, into the document at 11:47 p.m., in the empty store. He types it in the plain, factual way of a man who has finally decided that accuracy matters more than protection. His hands are steady. He does not know why his hands are steady. He expected this to feel like drowning. It feels, instead, like the first cold breath after being underwater too long. Terrible and necessary and clarifying. He keeps typing. Lila Okonkwo was 26 years old when Dale let her go in September 2023, 1 month before Deja. She had worked at the store for 3 years in the pharmacy section, longer than Marcus, longer than Deja, long enough that the pharmacist she reported to, a gentle, meticulous man named Dr. Anand Mehta, had put her name forward twice for a full pharmacy technician certification program that Walmart offered to eligible employees. Lila was the kind of worker who made a workplace better without announcing it. She reorganized the consultation area, quietly, on her own initiative, because the previous arrangement made elderly customers stand in a way that strained their backs. She learned 12 words of Tagalog because several customers were more comfortable in Tagalog than English, and she felt it mattered that they were comfortable. She brought in a small plant for the counter, a succulent, low maintenance, the kind that asks almost nothing, because she thought the section looked cold. In September, a difficult customer filed a complaint with the district office, claiming that Lila had been rude and dismissive during a medication pickup interaction. The complaint was filed through the corporate portal, bypassing the store entirely, which meant Dale received a call from his district manager before he had heard anything from Lila or Dr. Mehta or anyone else in the pharmacy section. The district manager's tone was the tone of someone managing optics. He said the complaint needed to be addressed. He said customer perception was the store's most valuable asset. He said these things with the smooth authority of someone 3 levels removed from the actual event. Dale called Lila into his office. He did not ask her what happened. He told her what the complaint said happened. There is a difference, a significant, load-bearing difference, between those two things. And Dale, sitting in his office at 11:47 p.m., typing sentences nobody asked for, understands this now in a way he did not understand it in September. Lila explained. Calmly, clearly, with the specificity of someone who remembers the interaction because it was difficult, and difficult interactions are the ones that stay with you. She said the customer had been upset before she reached the counter. She said the customer had received incorrect information about their insurance coverage from the insurance company itself, not the pharmacy. She said she had done everything she knew how to do to help. Dale thanked her for the explanation. 2 days later, he let her go. He cited a vague, covering phrase, performance and conduct standards. The kind of phrase that means everything and nothing simultaneously, that fills the line on the paperwork without saying anything true. Dr. Mehta put in a formal objection with the district office. The objection was reviewed and declined. He put in a second one. The second was reviewed and also declined. He has told Dale, in writing, that he considers what happened to Lila one of the most professionally unjust things he has witnessed in his career. The small succulent is still on the counter. Dr. Mehta waters it every Monday. Dale finishes the document at 12:31 a.m. It is 11 pages, single-spaced, every detail he can remember, written as accurately as he can write it, with no softening language and no covering phrases. He reads it through once, from the top. His name is in it many times. None of the appearances are flattering. He saves it. He sits for a moment, looking at the saved file on his screen. He does not know yet what he is going to do with it. He has not planned that far. He wrote it because it needed to exist, because Marcus Reyes and Lila Okonkwo deserved to have someone write down the truth of what happened to them, even if that someone is the person who caused it. And even if the document sits in a folder on a work computer, in an empty store, and no one ever reads it but him. But then he does something he did not plan to do. He opens his email. He types an address he has to look up. has never emailed this person directly before, has only seen the name on internal distribution lists and district-wide communications. The address belongs to the district manager. Dale writes, "I need to speak with you about 2 former employees. I have information that I believe requires action. Please let me know when you have time this week." He sends it before he can think about it differently. The sent confirmation appears on the screen. A small sound. A small thing. The digital equivalent of setting a lanyard on a belt. Small, deliberate, irreversible. He closes his laptop. He sits for a moment in the dark of his office, with the dimmed lights of the empty store beyond the door and the orange circles of the parking lot security lights coming through the window and the shopping cart at the edge of the lot still tilted, still going nowhere. Then he picks up his keys. He drives home to Pinole. He steps over Caleb's basketball shoes in the hallway. He does not move them. He goes to bed. He sleeps, for the first time in 11 days, without the particular weight pressing on his chest that has been there since October 24th. Since the moment he watched Deja Simmons set a lanyard down on a belt and understood, immediately and involuntarily, that he was in the wrong. The weight is not gone. It will not be gone for a long time, maybe ever, but it has shifted. It has moved from the place where things sit when we are carrying them alone to the place where things sit when we have finally, imperfectly, told someone else the truth. It is a different kind of weight, lighter in some ways, harder in others. The district manager's name is Robert Vale. He is 54 years old, manages 11 stores across the East Bay, and has been with Walmart Corporate for 19 years. He is the kind of institutional man who has learned to read situations quickly, not deeply, not generously, but quickly, in the way the institution requires. He sees Dale's email at 6:08 a.m. on Wednesday morning, on his phone, before he gets out of bed. He reads it twice. He knows about the Walmart moment. Everyone in his district knows about the Walmart moment. It has been the single most discussed event in his professional sphere for 11 days, circulating in group texts and district calls, and one very uncomfortable conference call with the regional director the week after it happened. The regional director used the phrase brand sensitivity 4 times in 20 minutes. Robert Vale stares at Dale's email. He thinks about the phrase 2 former employees. He thinks about information that requires action. He has been in this industry long enough to know what that sentence means when it comes from a store manager at midnight. It does not mean good news. It does not mean routine paperwork. It means someone has been awake in an empty store, alone with themselves, and arrived somewhere they cannot walk back from. He types back, "Thursday, 10 a.m., my office." He puts his phone down. He looks at the ceiling. He thinks about 11 stores. He thinks about 11 sets of registers, 11 stockrooms, 11 parking lots with shopping carts tilted at their edges. He thinks about how many Marcuses and Lilas might be in 11 stores across the East Bay, dismissed in quiet moments that never became videos, that never had a famous face turn around and ask the question that needed asking. He does not know the answer. That is the part that keeps him looking at the ceiling. On Wednesday morning, while Dale is driving to work and Robert Vale is looking at ceilings, Deja Simmons is doing something she has not done before. She is writing. Not notes in a notebook, not the careful, practical note-taking she does in class or in meetings. She is writing something longer, something personal. She is sitting at the kitchen table with her community college composition notebook open, the one with the cracked spine from being carried in a bag on 2 buses, and she is writing about the Tuesday, not the version the internet saw, the inside version, the version that lives in the 43 seconds, and the lanyard, and the one quiet okay, and the 7 steps toward the door. She is writing it because Tamara asked her to, in an email sent Tuesday evening after Deja left the center. Tamara said, "Before you start gathering other people's stories, write yours down." The whole thing. Not for anyone else yet. Just so you know what it feels like to tell the truth on paper before you ask someone else to do it. Deja thought about this for a long time before she opened the notebook. Then she opened it. She has been writing for 40 minutes. She is on page 4. Her handwriting is getting faster, which happens when you stop thinking about the writing and start thinking about the thing you are writing about. When the pen stops being a tool and starts being a door. She writes about the coffee stain. She writes about the 43 seconds. She writes about the lanyard and the word she cannot bring herself to write directly, but writes around, circling it, describing its shape and its weight without naming it, because sometimes the truth of a thing lives in what surrounds it, rather than in the thing itself. She writes about turning around when her name was called. She writes, "I turned around because I heard my name. That's all it was. A stranger knew my name because it was on my shirt, and he used it like it mattered. Like I was a person, and not a situation to be resolved. I had been a situation for 43 seconds, and then I was a person again, and the difference between those two things is the whole story." She stops writing. She reads that paragraph back. She reads it 3 times. She thinks, that is true. That is exactly true. She closes the notebook. She sits with the truth of it for a moment, the way you sit with something you have said out loud for the first time and realize it has been waiting inside you for longer than you knew. Then Marcus shuffles into the kitchen in his socks, opens the refrigerator, stares into it with the unfocused dedication of a 12-year-old searching for something he cannot name, and says, "Is there anything to eat that isn't a vegetable?" Deja says, "There's leftover rice." Marcus says, "That's barely food." Deja says, "Make toast." Marcus makes toast. He sits across from her at the table. He looks at the notebook. He says, with the casual, unceremonious curiosity of a younger sibling, "What are you writing?" Deja says, "A story." Marcus says, "About what?" Deja thinks about this for a moment. She says, "About what it costs to be a person. And what it feels like when someone treats you like one." Marcus looks at her. He is 12, and 12-year-olds are not supposed to be moved by things, and he is making every effort to appear not moved by this. He says, "That's deep for a Wednesday morning." Deja says, "Eat your toast." He eats his toast. Thursday comes. Robert Vale's office is in a corporate building in Pleasanton, 30 miles east of Emeryville. Dale drives there in his car, a 10-year-old Honda that he has kept meticulously because he is the kind of man who maintains things, and sits in the parking lot for 4 minutes before going in. He has printed the document. 11 pages, single-spaced, with Marcus's name and Lila's name, and the truth laid out in plain language. He has the pages in a manila folder. The folder is on the passenger seat. He picks it up. He goes in. The meeting lasts 1 hour and 40 minutes. Dale will not describe the details of that meeting to anyone for a very long time. What can be said is this. Robert Vale reads the document. He reads the whole thing, in Dale's presence, without speaking. When he finishes, he sets it on the desk and looks at Dale with the expression of a man who has just been handed something that is going to require him to make choices he would prefer not to make. Robert says, "Why are you bringing this to me now?" Dale says, "Because I should have brought it to you in August and September, and I didn't, and I know why I didn't, and the reason isn't good enough." Robert is quiet. Dale says, "I want to find them. Marcus and Lila. I want to make it right, whatever that looks like. I don't know if they'll want anything to do with me, and I understand if they don't. But someone should try." Robert Vale looks at the 11 pages. He picks up his phone. He calls the HR director. He says, "I need you to pull 2 files." What happens next unfolds over 9 days. Quietly, without cameras, without trending topics, without a 16-second clip that anyone will ever watch. A Walmart HR coordinator reaches Marcus Reyes by phone on a Friday afternoon. Marcus is at his overnight job, the grocery store in Richmond, and takes the call on his break, standing outside the back of the building in the cold, next to a stack of cardboard boxes being broken down for recycling. He listens. He is very quiet while he listens. When the HR coordinator finishes, Marcus says, "Are you telling me the recount found them 2 months ago?" The coordinator says, "Yes." Marcus says, "And nobody called me." The coordinator says, "No, and we are very sorry for that." Marcus is quiet for a long moment. The cardboard boxes are beside him. The cold air is around him. He is 20 years old, standing outside a grocery store in Richmond on a Friday afternoon, being told that the thing that was taken from him was taken wrongly, and that the proof of that has existed for 2 months in a corrected inventory entry that nobody bothered to show him. He says, "What does this mean, practically? What does this mean for me?" The coordinator explains. Back pay. A formal letter clearing his record. The offer of reinstatement, if he wants it. Marcus says, "I don't want to go back to that store." The coordinator says, "We understand." Marcus says, "Can the back pay go to my mother?" The coordinator says, "We can arrange that." Marcus says, "Okay." He goes back inside. He finishes his shift. He does not tell anyone that evening. He sits with it alone for one night. The way Deja sat with the piece of paper. The way Dale sat with the document. The way everyone in this story has had to sit alone with the truest parts of it before they could share them. The next morning, he calls his mother. He tells her. She cries. He does not. He has done his crying about this, in private, in August, when he was still figuring out how to use the energy for something better. But he stays on the phone while she cries, and he says, "I'm okay, Mom. I promise I'm okay." And he means it. He is okay. He is 20 years old and he is okay, and that is both the most ordinary thing in the world and a kind of miracle, given what it costs some people to arrive at okay from where he has been. Leila Okonkwo takes the call on a Saturday morning. She is at home in her apartment in Alameda, a small, carefully kept place with plants on every windowsill, because Leila Okonkwo has a relationship with plants that goes beyond decoration. She grows things. She has always grown things. Her mother grew things in Nigeria before she came to California, and her grandmother grew things before that. And the small succulent she left on the pharmacy counter at the Walmart in Emeryville is one small representative of a long line of things Leila Okonkwo has placed in the world and trusted to continue without her. She listens to the HR coordinator. She asks 3 precise, considered questions. About the complaint. About whether it was investigated beyond the customer's account. About what the formal correction will say. She writes down the answers in a small notebook. When the coordinator finishes, Lila says, "I want the formal letter. I want it in writing, on letterhead, with the date and the specific language about the complaint being unsubstantiated." The coordinator says, "Of course." Leila says, "And I want it sent to the pharmacy board, because I have a certification application pending, and this needs to be on my record correctly." The coordinator says, "We'll take care of that." Leila says, "Thank you." She hangs up. She sits in her apartment, surrounded by plants, in the Saturday morning light. She does not cry. She is not built for crying about things like this. She is built for precision and patience and the long game, for understanding that injustice rarely corrects itself quickly, for trusting that the truth has a longer lifespan than the circumstances that tried to bury it. She picks up her phone again. She calls Dr. Anand Mehta. He picks up on the first ring. She says, "The complaint has been formally withdrawn from my record." Dr. Mehta is quiet for a moment. Then he says, with the careful dignity of a man who does not often let his emotions speak first, "I am very glad to hear that, Leila." She says, "How is the succulent?" He says, "Thriving." She says, "Good." She smiles. None of this is in any video. None of this trends on any platform. No morning show segment covers it. No anchor says these names in front of a photograph. No 16-second clip captures Marcus saying, "Can the back pay go to my mother," in the cold, behind a grocery store in Richmond. No camera sees Lila writing down 3 precise questions in a small notebook in an apartment full of plants in Alameda on a Saturday morning. The world does not see this part. The world sees Steph Curry. The world sees the lanyard and the applause, and the manager's retreat, and the clean, shareable arc of a famous person doing the right thing in a public place. The world sees what the cameras caught, and shares it 2 million times, and calls it a feel-good story, and moves on to the next thing, because that is what the world does with feel-good stories. But here is what the world missed. A man sitting alone at midnight in an empty store, typing the names of people he wronged into a document nobody asked for, because the conscience does not require an audience to do its work. A 20-year-old standing next to cardboard boxes in the cold, saying, "Can the back pay go to my mother?" The most quietly devastating sentence in this entire story, spoken by a kid who has already learned, too young, to think about someone else first. A woman surrounded by plants, asking about a succulent, because some things matter, in ways that are too small for headlines, and too large to let go. And somewhere in all of this, in the document and the phone calls and the cardboard boxes and the plants and the 11 pages and the one careful email sent at midnight, something that is larger than any single moment has been quietly, imperfectly, working. Not justice, not completely, not yet, maybe not ever, completely. But something. Something that does not require a camera to be real. Something that was set in motion the moment Steph Curry put down a basket and turned around. Not because the cameras were there, but because they weren't yet, and he turned around anyway. 6 days before the stage. 6 days before Deja stands in the warm room on 81st Avenue and says the thing Steph said to her, and the room goes quiet, in the way that only happens when a truth lands exactly where it was always meant to land. 6 days, and something happens that nobody in this story has planned for. Something that begins with a 12-year-old boy named Marcus. Not Marcus Reyes, but Marcus Simmons, Deja's brother, 12 years old, headphones around his neck, toast crumbs on the kitchen table, who picks up his sister's composition notebook while she is in the shower and reads the first 4 pages. He reads them slowly, the way he reads things that matter, and when Deja comes back into the kitchen, her notebook is closed on the table, and Marcus is sitting very still, looking at something she cannot see. She says, "Did you read that?" He says, "Yeah." She says, "Marcus." He looks at her. His face is doing the thing that 12-year-old faces do when they have understood something large and do not yet have the language for it. Open and searching and very, very young. He says, "Deja, you have to tell this to everyone." She looks at him. He says, "Not the Steph Curry part. Not the video part." He puts his hand flat on the notebook. "This part. The 43 seconds part. The lanyard part." He pauses. "The part where you said okay and kept walking." Deja sits down. She looks at the notebook under her brother's hand. She thinks about the stage, about the room. About 200 people leaning forward. She thinks, he is 12 years old and he is exactly right. She thinks, this is what it feels like when someone treats you like a person. She picks up her pen. She opens the notebook to page 5. She starts writing. She writes for 3 hours. She does not stop for water. She does not check her phone. Marcus, who has the instincts of someone who has grown up watching his sister work in the particular focused silence that means do not interrupt, quietly makes himself a second piece of toast and takes it to his room without being asked. Priya comes home from a friend's house at noon, reads the room in the way that 9-year-olds who have grown up in small apartments learn to read rooms, and goes directly to her corner of the bedroom she shares with Marcus without saying anything. Cheryl wheels herself to the kitchen doorway, Her knee is bad today. She is using the second-hand wheelchair she keeps for the hard days. Looks at Deja bent over the notebook. Looks at the pen moving. Looks at the stack of pages already filled, and wheels back to the living room without a word. She turns the television down. This is the language of the Simmons apartment. Volume and motion and the careful management of space around someone who needs it. It is a language they have all been speaking for years, without naming it, without choosing it. The language of people who have learned that attention is a resource, and that giving it to the right person at the right moment is one of the most generous things you can do. Deja writes. She writes the coffee stain and the 2 buses, and the 43 seconds, and the lanyard, and the 1 OK, and the 7 steps. She writes the stranger, who said her name like it mattered. She writes the 12 seconds she has carried in her pocket. She writes her mother in the kitchen, handing her wet dishes. She writes Priya's drawing on the refrigerator, the figure with long arms, labeled in 9-year-old handwriting. She writes Marcus at the table, asking what the story is about, and her own answer, what it costs to be a person, and what it feels like when someone treats you like one. She writes what she has never said out loud to anyone, that the hardest moment was not the word Gerald used, not the 43 seconds, not even losing the job. The hardest moment was the silence of the people in line. The woman who flinched and then looked at her phone. The man who looked at the floor. The ordinary, human, completely understandable silence of people who saw something wrong and did not know what to do with the knowing. She writes, I am not angry at them. I understand that silence. I have been that silence. We all have. We have all been standing in a line somewhere, watching something happen, holding our basket, telling ourselves it is not our place, it is not our problem, someone else will say something, the moment is already passing. The moment is always passing. The question is what we do before it goes. She stops. She reads that back. She reads it 3 times. She does not cross it out. When she closes the notebook at 2:17 p.m., she has filled 19 pages. She has never written 19 pages of anything in her life. Not for school, not for herself, not for anyone. She has written essays, the careful, structured, here is my thesis kind of writing that community college requires. But she has never written like this. Like the pen is a faucet, and someone finally turned it. She sits back. Her hand aches. There is ink on the side of her right hand, the way there always is when she writes fast and long, a blue smear along the outer edge of her palm, like a geographic feature on a small map. She looks at the 19 pages. She thinks about what Marcus said. Not the Steph Curry part, not the video part, this part. She picks up her phone and calls Tamara. Tamara picks up on the second ring. Deja says, I wrote something. Tamara says, tell me. Deja says, 19 pages, handwritten, in a composition notebook with a cracked spine. She pauses. It's not polished. It's not formatted. It doesn't have a thesis statement. Tamara says, good. Deja says, I want to read some of it. On the stage. Next week. Tamara is quiet for 3 seconds. Not the hesitant quiet of someone who has a problem with the idea, but the full quiet of someone taking a moment to understand the size of what they have just been offered. She says, Deja. Deja says, is that okay? Is that what the event is for? Tamara says, that is exactly what the event is for. She pauses. Then she says, carefully, the way you say something, when you want to make sure the other person hears the full weight of it. I want you to know something. When Steph asked us to look for you, he said one specific thing. He said, and I am quoting him directly, he said, she has something to say. I could tell. Give her the room to say it. Deja holds the phone. She does not speak for a moment. Outside the kitchen window, a car passes slowly on the street below. A dog barks twice and stops. The refrigerator hums. The ordinary sounds of the apartment, the building, the neighborhood, all of it continuing its ordinary motion. She says, "He said that?" Tamara says, "He said that?" That evening, Deja does something she has not done in 11 days. She calls Raymond. Not the Raymond who comes to the Walmart. She does not have his number, has never had it. Their relationship lives entirely in the Tuesday ritual of low-sodium crackers and remembered preferences. She calls a different Raymond, Raymond Simmons, her father, who lives in Stockton and who she speaks to approximately 4 times a year, on birthdays and holidays, and the occasional occasion when something happens that is too large to navigate alone, and she finds herself dialing before she has decided to. He picks up on the 4th ring. He says, "Deja girl." He is the only person in the world who calls her that. She says, "Did you see the video?" He says, "Your aunt sent it to me 3 times. Different family group chats." She says, "Okay." He says, "You okay?" She says, "I'm getting there." He is quiet for a moment. Raymond Simmons is not a man of many words. He is a man of pauses, of the kind of silence that has texture to it, that says things that words would approximate but not quite reach. Deja has her mother's work ethic, and her mother's hands, and her mother's way of moving through difficulty without making it anyone else's burden. But she has her father's silences, the ones that think before they speak, the ones that know when something is too large for the first sentence. He says, "I'm proud of you." She says, "You don't have to say that." He says, "I know I don't have to." A pause. "You put that lanyard down like it was made of something important. Did you know you were going to do it that way?" She thinks about this. She says, "No, I just didn't want to make a sound." He says, "That's dignity. That's not something you learn. You either have it or you don't. You've always had it." Deja looks at the refrigerator, Priya's drawing, the figure with long arms. She says, "Dad, I'm going to speak somewhere next week, in front of people." He says, "Okay." She says, "I'm going to read some things I wrote." He says, "Okay." She says, "I'm scared." He says, "Yeah." Another pause. The textured kind. "You'll do it anyway. It is not a question." She says, "Yeah." He says, "Call me after." She says, "I will." She hangs up. She holds the phone for a moment. Then she goes to the refrigerator and looks at Priya's drawing. Really looks at it. The purple crayon, the earnest proportions, the careful letters. "My sister who works hard." She takes it down. She goes to Priya's room and knocks softly. Priya's voice, "Come in." Deja opens the door. Priya is on her bed, coloring something new. She is always coloring something new. An endless, joyful production of color and feeling on paper. Deja holds up the drawing. She says, "Can I keep this in my room?" Priya looks at it, looks at Deja, looks back at it. She says, with the serious deliberation of an artist considering where her work belongs, "Yes, but put it somewhere you can see it from your bed." Deja says, "Deal." She tapes it to the wall beside her bed, visible from the pillow, in the last place she sees before sleeping, and the first place she sees when she wakes. She looks at it for a long time that night. 4 days before the stage, something unexpected happens in the Walmart on Shellmound Street. It is a Monday morning, just before the store opens at 7. The parking lot is still mostly empty. A delivery truck is at the loading dock. A crow is walking the length of a cart return with the proprietary attitude of a crow that has decided this is its territory. Greta, the overnight supervisor, the woman who texted Marcus a photograph of the corrected inventory entry on a Sunday afternoon because she believed he deserved to know, is finishing her shift. She is 53 years old, has worked overnight retail for 22 years, and is in possession of the particular wisdom of people who see the world in its least watched hours, the wisdom of closing time and opening time, of the store when it is only itself, and not yet performing for anyone. She is putting on her jacket in the break room when Dale Hutchins comes in. They have not spoken about anything beyond the operational, in 11 weeks. Since the day she told him that boy did not take anything, and he said the numbers don't match, and she walked away. 11 weeks of logistics and schedules, and the careful avoidance of everything underneath. Dale says, "Greta." She says, "Dale." He stands in the doorway. He is holding a coffee cup, his own, from home, a ceramic mug with a chip on the handle. He looks like someone who has rehearsed something and is now deciding whether to say the rehearsed version or the true version. He says, the true version. He says, "I contacted Marcus. Through HR. They're making it right." He pauses. And Lila. Same thing. Greta has her jacket half on. She goes still. She says, "When?" He says, "Last week." She looks at him. The way she looks at him is the way you look at something you have been waiting to see for a long time. Not with surprise exactly, because you always believed this moment was possible, but with the particular feeling of a belief confirmed after it has cost you something to keep believing it. She says, "Did they respond?" He says, "Marcus said yes to the back pay. He said he wanted it to go to his mother." He stops. He said he didn't want to come back. Greta says, "I know." She finishes putting her jacket on. He found something better. "I've been keeping in touch." Dale looks at her. He says, "You've been keeping in touch." She says, "Someone had to." She picks up her bag. She is about to walk past him through the doorway. She stops. She says, not warmly, not coldly, but with the honesty of someone who has decided that the truth is more valuable than comfort. "What you did in August and September was wrong, Dale. You know that. And I'm glad you're fixing it. But I want you to understand something." She looks at him steadily. Those kids didn't need Steph Curry to walk into a Walmart for what happened to them to matter. It mattered in August. It mattered in September. It mattered every day that nothing was done about it. Dale says, "I know." She says, "Do you?" He says, "I'm learning to." Greta looks at him for one more moment. Then she nods. Once, the nod of someone who is not ready to forgive, but is willing to acknowledge the beginning of something, and walks past him through the doorway. Dale stands in the empty break room, with his coffee cup, and the chip on the handle, and the truth she just handed him, which is heavier than the 11 pages, and the midnight email, and all of it combined, because it came from the person who was there, who watched, who tried, and was ignored, and kept trying anyway. He stands there for a while. 3 days before the stage, Deja receives a package. It comes to the Walmart, addressed to her, care of the store, which means someone knew where to send it without having her home address, which means someone was thoughtful about her privacy while still wanting her to have the thing inside. The package is small, brown paper, neatly wrapped, her name on the front in clear block letters. She opens it in the break room during her lunch break, sitting alone at the table where she once wrote 12 seconds onto a piece of paper. Inside the brown paper is a box. Inside the box, wrapped in tissue, is a composition notebook. Not the cracked spine kind she has been writing in. A nicer one. Hard cover, dark green, the color of her good jacket, the kind that feels like it was chosen rather than grabbed. There is a note tucked inside the front cover, handwritten, 8 lines. She reads it. She reads it again. She closes the notebook and holds it in her lap for a moment, looking at the break room wall, the bulletin board with the shift schedule and the safety reminder, and a photograph from last year's store holiday party where someone has drawn a small cartoon face on a balloon in the background. She does not open the note again. She does not need to. She already knows who it is from. Not because of the handwriting, she has nothing to compare it to. Not because of a signature, there is none. She knows because of the 8 lines, because of what they say, which she will not share yet, not here, not in this break room, not with 11 days of the world's curiosity pressing against her from every direction. She knows because the 8 lines say the same thing that the 12 seconds said, in a different shape, in a different voice, through the medium of a hardcover green notebook and a small box with brown paper, and the careful, deliberate decision to send it to the store rather than her home, to give her the thing without asking anything in return. She puts the notebook in her bag. She puts the note in her pocket, next to the folded piece of paper that has been there for 12 days. 2 pieces of paper now, both in her pocket. She finishes her lunch. She goes back to register 7. She scans 198 items. She says, "Have a good one," 33 times. She goes home. 2 days before the stage, Tamara sends an email with the event details attached. 200 seats. Doors open at 6. Program begins at 6:30. 3 speakers before Deja, 2 community members sharing stories of the center's impact, and a second-grade teacher from a nearby school who has been bringing her class to the center for reading programs since 2021. Then Deja. Then remarks from the foundation. No Steph on stage. He has been clear about that from the beginning. He will be in the room. He will be present. But the stage is not his. Deja reads the email at her kitchen table. She reads the part that says, "Keynote Community Speaker, Deja Simmons," and something moves through her that she does not have a name for. It is not pride exactly. It is not nerves exactly. It is the feeling of a thing that has been heading toward you from very far away, that you could see coming for some time, that arrives and is both exactly what you expected and nothing like it. She replies to Tamara, "I'll be there." Then she opens the green notebook. She has decided not to read from the composition notebook on stage. That one is hers, the 19 pages, the ink smear, the cracked spine. She is going to write something new, something shaped for the room, for the 200 people, for the children who eat lunch there, and the families who depend on what the center does, and the volunteers who show up, because showing up is what they have decided to be. She writes at the kitchen table until midnight. She writes the next morning before the buses. She writes in the break room on Wednesday, the day before the stage, her last shift before Thursday. She has never worked this hard at any piece of writing in her life. Not the social work essays, not the financial aid appeals she has written for herself and her mother in careful, formal language designed to make their need legible to institutions that speak only in certain kinds of words. This is different. This writing is not trying to make need legible. This writing is trying to make a person visible. Herself, the people she knows, the world as it actually is when nobody famous is walking through it. She writes, "Most of the time, dignity doesn't trend. Most of the time, nobody turns around. Most of the time, you put the lanyard down and you walk out, and the store keeps going, and the world keeps going, and you get on a bus, and you go home, and you figure out how to get up the next day and try again. And that ordinary, invisible, uncelebrated trying is the bravest thing most people ever do. Not because it is dramatic, because it isn't, because it happens in the dark, in the quiet, without applause, without a famous face in the aisle. It happens because people like us don't have the option of not happening." She stops. She puts the pen down. She reads that paragraph. She thinks, Marcus was right. She thinks, this is the part that needs to be said. The night before the stage, Deja cannot sleep. She lies in the dark of her room and looks at Priya's drawing on the wall, the figure with long arms, visible even in the low light that comes through the window from the street below, the outline of it familiar as a landmark now. She thinks about what she is going to say tomorrow. She thinks about the 2 pieces of paper in her jacket pocket, hanging on the chair by the door. She thinks about Steph Curry sitting in the second row in a plain navy blazer. She thinks about a 16-year-old boy named Jordan, who started clapping before he decided to. She thinks about Raymond Simmons in Stockton, who said, "You'll do it anyway," without making it a question. She thinks about Greta, who kept in touch, who texted a photograph to a 20-year-old she barely knew because she believed he deserved to know. Who has been the quiet, steady, unfilmed version of doing the right thing in a world that only notices the dramatic version? She thinks about Marcus Reyes, saying, "Can the back pay go to my mother?" She thinks about Lila Okonkwo, asking about a succulent. She thinks about Dale Hutchins typing names at midnight. She thinks about her own mother in the next room, sleeping the deep sleep of a woman whose knee hurts, and whose daughter is about to stand on a stage, and whose heart, Deja knows, is doing something large and quiet and untranslatable in the dark. She thinks, all of these people, all of these ordinary, specific, unremarkable to the world people, doing the thing that the world doesn't make a clip about, carrying the thing, setting it down carefully, picking it back up. She thinks, that is the story. That has always been the story. She closes her eyes. She does not sleep for a while. But when sleep comes, it comes solidly, the way it comes when you have done the work and said the true thing, and there is nothing left to do until morning except rest. She sleeps. The drawing is on the wall. The 2 pieces of paper are in her pocket. The green notebook is on the table. And tomorrow, in a warm room on 81st Avenue, under good light, in front of 200 people who have been quietly doing the unfilmed version of everything, Deja Simmons is going to stand up and say what needs to be said. Not because Steph Curry walked in, because she walked out, and turned around, and came back. The morning of the stage. 6:47 a.m. The Simmons apartment. The kitchen. Deja is at the table with the green notebook open, reading through what she has written, making small marks with a pencil. Not changes, just emphasis. The places she wants to make sure she does not rush through. The places where the truth is most concentrated, and she wants to give it room. Marcus comes in. He is dressed for school, backpack on, headphones around his neck. He opens the refrigerator, looks into it, closes it. He opens a cabinet, finds a granola bar, peels it. He looks at the green notebook. He says, "Today's the day." Deja says, "Today's the day." He takes a bite of the granola bar. He chews. He looks at his sister the way 12-year-olds look at their older siblings when they are trying to say something they do not know how to say. Sideways, careful, using the peripheral vision of the heart. He says, "You know what you wrote? About how most of the time nobody turns around?" She says, "Yeah." He says, "I think you're wrong." She looks at him. He says, "I think people want to turn around. I think most people see something wrong, and they want to do something. They just don't know they're allowed to." He peels the granola bar wrapper down further, thinking, like, if someone in the store had turned around before Steph did. If one regular person had just said something, everything would have been the same. It would have mattered the same amount. He takes another bite. They just needed to see someone do it first, he says. That's all. Deja looks at her brother, 12 years old, headphones around his neck. Granola bar in hand, she picks up her pencil. She opens the green notebook to the last page she wrote. She adds one more paragraph. Because he is exactly right. And the truest things in this story have always come from the people nobody was watching. The paragraph Deja adds is 11 sentences long. She writes it in pencil, unlike everything else in the green notebook, which is in ink. The pencil is deliberate. She wants to be able to change it if she needs to. Not because she doubts Marcus, but because the thing he said is so precise, so unexpectedly complete, that she is afraid of getting the translation wrong. She is afraid that moving his words from the kitchen into the notebook will lose something in the crossing, the way a song loses something when you try to describe it to someone who has never heard it. She writes slowly. She chooses each word the way you choose a step on uncertain ground, testing it, committing, moving forward. When she finishes, she reads it back. It is right. Somehow, it is right. Marcus's idea has survived the crossing. She closes the notebook. She looks at her brother, who has finished his granola bar and is now looking for somewhere to put the wrapper, with the specific lost expression of someone who does not want to be told to throw it in the bin, that is 12 inches from his left hand. She says, "Put it in the bin, Marcus." He puts it in the bin. He picks up his backpack. He says, at the door, not looking back, in the casual tone of someone dropping something important, without wanting to make it a thing. "Tell them what I said. Not the credit. Just the idea. Tell them a 12-year-old figured it out before breakfast." He leaves. The door closes. Deja sits in the quiet kitchen for a moment. She thinks, he is going to be something, that kid. She thinks, he already is. By 9 a.m. on the morning of the stage, something is happening across the city that nobody in the Simmons apartment knows about yet. It begins with a journalist. Her name is Priscilla Okafor, and she writes for the San Francisco Chronicle, the same paper whose reporter tried and failed, 3 weeks earlier, to find out what Steph Curry said to Deja Simmons. Priscilla is 34 years old, has been covering Bay Area community stories for 6 years, and has a reputation for finding the true shape of a thing when everyone else is still arguing about the surface. She has been following this story differently than her colleagues. While others chased the quote, the 12 seconds, the thing Steph said, Priscilla has been following a different thread. She found Greta through a source at the Walmart district office. She talked to Greta for 2 hours on a Tuesday evening, in a coffee shop in Emeryville, over cold brew that neither of them drank because they were too absorbed in the conversation to remember it was there. Greta told her everything, about Marcus, about Lila, about the corrected inventory entry, about the succulent on the pharmacy counter, about 11 weeks of silence in a break room hallway. Priscilla asked if she could use any of it. Greta said, "Use all of it. These kids have been quiet long enough." Priscilla spent 2 weeks verifying. She found Marcus through Greta. She found Lila through Dr. Mehta, who told her about the succulent and the certification application, and the formal letter, and spoke about Lila with the specific, careful admiration of someone describing a person they consider, without reservation, better at their job than most people they have ever met. She found the corrected inventory entry through a source she will not name. She found the HR correspondence. She has been sitting on the story for 4 days, waiting. She is waiting for something she cannot quite name. A moment, a context, a place to set the story down so that it lands correctly. So that Marcus and Lila are not footnotes to a viral video, but the center of their own full account. So that the story of what happened at the Walmart on Shellmound Street is not just the 16 seconds, but the whole of it. The parts that were filmed, and the parts that happened at midnight, and the parts that happened in the cold behind a grocery store in Richmond. At 9 a.m. on Thursday, the morning of the stage, Tamara Wells calls Priscilla Okafor. Tamara says, "I have something you should see tonight. Can you come to Oakland?" Priscilla says, "I've been ready for 3 weeks." Tamara says, "Bring a notebook, not a recorder, a notebook." Priscilla says, "Why a notebook?" Tamara says, "Because some things should be written down first, before they become anything else." At 10:15 a.m., Steph Curry is at the Warriors' practice facility. The team has a game in 2 days, a home game against the Los Angeles Lakers, which means the practice today will be focused and specific and long. But Steph is here early, as he always is, alone in the gym, with the lights up full and a rack of basketballs, and the particular silence of an empty arena that he has loved since he was 7 years old, and would sneak into the arena at Charlotte Coliseum during his father's warm-ups, and stand at half-court and look at the size of the place and feel something he could not name. He can name it now. He calls it rightness, the feeling of being exactly where you are supposed to be. He shoots from the corner, makes it, moves to the wing, makes it, steps back beyond the arc, further than most players consider reasonable, and makes that too. The ball arcing high and clean, and dropping through the net with the sound that has defined his career. A sound like a sentence completing itself, like a question answered. He does this for 40 minutes, He is thinking about tonight. He has not told his teammates about the event. He mentioned it to Aisha. They talked about it over breakfast, the two of them and the kids. Riley eating cereal and asking her father why he keeps looking at his phone, and Steph saying waiting for something, and Riley saying what, and Steph saying to find out if something I hoped would happen is actually happening. Riley, who is 8 and has her father's directness, said, "Did it?" Steph said, "I think so. Tonight I'll know." What Steph knows. What he has known since he sent the package, since he wrote the 8 lines in the note tucked inside the front cover of the green notebook, since he asked Tamara to find the right person and trust her with the room, is that the moment that mattered most in this story did not happen at Register 7. It happened before. It happened somewhere he was not. It happened when a young woman decided, in the particular quiet of her own life, to keep going, to show up, to remember Raymond's crackers and Gloria's granddaughter and the hungry little boy with the snack display, to do all the small, invisible, essential things that make a place human when nobody is watching and nobody is filming and the fluorescent lights hum the same whether you are here or not. That was the moment. That has always been the moment. He walked into a store and saw it already in progress. He shoots from half-court, the way he does sometimes at the end of a session, not for any reason except the pure, uncalculating joy of trying a thing that is almost impossible and occasionally is not. The ball goes up in its long arc. It goes in. He watches it fall through the net. He nods once to the empty gym. He goes to get ready for tonight. At 11:30 a.m., in a corporate building in Pleasanton, Dale Hutchins is sitting across the desk from Robert Vale for the second time in a week. He was not expecting this meeting. The call came yesterday afternoon, Robert's assistant, brief and professional, requesting his presence Thursday morning. Dale said yes before he finished the sentence, because when the district manager's office calls you twice in 1 week, you say yes. Robert Vale's office is the kind of office that communicates authority through absence rather than display. No trophies, no awards on the wall. A desk, 2 chairs, a window overlooking a parking structure, a whiteboard with numbers on it that Dale does not look at closely because they are not meant for him. Robert has a folder on the desk. Dale recognizes it. Or rather, he recognizes the thickness of it, the weight. It is the kind of folder that has been assembled by people who do their jobs carefully. Robert says, "I want to tell you what's happened since our meeting on Thursday." He opens the folder. He tells Dale about Marcus, about the back pay, the cleared record, the HR conversation. He tells Dale about Lila, the formal letter, the certification board notification, the specific, precise language of the correction that Dr. Mehta helped draft because Dr. Mehta had kept his own records and his records were thorough. Dale listens to all of this. Then Robert says something that Dale does not expect. He says, "The regional director wants to speak with you." Dale says, "When?" Robert says, "Tomorrow morning." Dale says, "About the document." Robert says, "About the document. About Marcus and Lila. About process." He pauses. About what happens when the process fails the people it is supposed to protect. Dale is quiet for a moment. He says, "Am I being let go?" Robert looks at him steadily. He says, "That decision has not been made. What I can tell you is that the regional director has read your document, and she found it. Her word, not mine. Extraordinary. Not because it excuses what happened. It doesn't. But because she has been in this industry for 27 years, and she has never, in 27 years, received an unsolicited, self-written account from a manager documenting their own failures with that level of specificity." He closes the folder. He says, "She wants to talk about whether that document can become something. A training resource. A framework for how we handle complaints differently." He pauses. "With your involvement, and with the consent of Marcus and Lila." Dale absorbs this. He says, Marcus and Lila have to agree. Robert says, absolutely. Dale says, and if they don't? Robert says, then the document stays in a folder, and it informs practice internally, and you live with what you know, and do your job better. He looks at Dale, which you should do regardless. Dale says, I know. Robert says, I know you know. He sits back. That's why I'm telling you before the regional director does, so you can sit with it for a day and decide what kind of man you want to be in that room tomorrow. Dale nods. He picks up his jacket from the back of the chair. He says, at the door, Robert, can I ask you something? Robert says, yes. Dale says, in 11 stores across the East Bay. Do you think Marcus and Lila are the only ones? Robert Vale looks at him. He does not answer immediately. He says, no, Dale, I do not think they are the only ones. The honesty of it sits in the office for a moment, large and uncomfortable and entirely necessary. Dale says, then we have more work to do. He leaves. Robert Vale sits alone in his office for a while. He looks at the folder. He picks up his phone. He calls the regional director. He says, I think we need to start with an audit. All 11 stores. Not compliance, not numbers. People. The ones who left quietly. He listens. I know it will take time. Yes. Another pause. I know what it will cost. He looks out the window at the parking structure. I think it costs more not to. He hangs up. He puts the folder in his briefcase. He thinks about Greta, whom he has never met, who texted a photograph to a 20-year-old on a Sunday afternoon because she believed he deserved to know. He thinks, that is the standard. That is what the standard should look like. He thinks, we have a long way to go. At 4:30 p.m., Cheryl Simmons is in the bathroom. She is standing at the mirror. Standing, not sitting in the wheelchair. Because her knee is better today than it was yesterday, and she has decided that today is a standing day. And Cheryl Simmons makes decisions about her own body, with the authority of a woman who has been managing it through difficulty for longer than most people would believe. She is doing her hair. This takes time. It takes care. She is not rushing it, even though Deja's event starts in 2 hours, and there are 3 people in this apartment who need to be dressed and on a bus in 90 minutes. She is doing her hair with the specific deliberateness of a woman who has decided that tonight she is going to look like who she is. Deja appears in the bathroom doorway. She is wearing the dark green jacket and a white shirt and dark trousers that she pressed last night with the iron she borrowed from the neighbor down the hall. Her hair is done, simple, clean, the way she wears it when something matters. She is holding the green notebook. She looks at her mother. Cheryl looks at her daughter in the mirror. They are quiet for a moment. Cheryl says, you look like your grandmother. Deja's grandmother, Cheryl's mother, Eloise, who died in 2017 and who ran a small alterations shop in East Oakland for 31 years, and who had the hands and the posture of a woman who made things fit correctly, is not something either of them mentions often, because the missing of her is still very present, and mentioning her requires a kind of emotional preparation they do not always have time for. Tonight they have time. Deja says, tell me something she would say right now, if she were here. Cheryl thinks about this. She says, she would say, stand where they can see you. Don't make yourself small so they're comfortable. Take up the whole space. You earned the whole space. Deja closes her eyes for a moment. She says, okay. Cheryl says, okay. Deja opens her eyes. She says, I'm scared, Mom. Cheryl turns from the mirror. She takes both of Deja's hands in hers, the way she did when Deja was small, and the world was too large, and the only answer to a too large world was the specific warmth of a mother's hands. She says, of what, exactly? Deja says that I'll get up there and it won't sound like anything, that it will just be words, that everything I wrote will just be words. Cheryl looks at her. She says, baby, Words are how Eloise kept a business for 31 years. Words are how I have kept this family together since your father left. Words are how you called me last week and said, "I think something good is happening." Mom and I cried for 20 minutes after I hung up. She squeezes Deja's hands. Words are not nothing. Words are what happens when a person decides their truth is worth the sound. Deja breathes. She says, "I love you." Cheryl says, "I know. Go put on your shoes." The bus to East Oakland leaves at 5:10 p.m. The Simmons family, Deja, Cheryl in the wheelchair that folds flat, Marcus in his good jacket that he is wearing with the sleeves pushed up in the way of a 12-year-old who has compromised on the jacket but not on the coolness, Priya in a purple dress she chose herself and a pair of sneakers that light up when she steps, takes up the back section of the bus in the way of a family that has learned to move together through the world with efficiency and grace. Priya has her crayons in her bag. She has decided she is going to draw a picture of Deja on the stage and give it to her afterward. Marcus has his headphones around his neck. He is looking out the window. He has not said much since the kitchen this morning, since the granola bar wrapper and the thing about people wanting to turn around. He is a 12-year-old processing something large in the way that 12-year-olds process things, internally, in motion, with the window as an ally. Deja is holding the green notebook in her lap with both hands. She is not reading it. She knows it. She is just holding it the way you hold something that has cost you something to make. Carefully, aware of its weight, grateful for it. The bus moves through Oakland, the barber shop, the school, the church with the painted mural, the woman with her arms wide, surrounded by children, surrounded by color. The crossing guard has gone home. The intersection is empty now, just the painted crosswalk lines on the asphalt, still there, marking the path even when no one needs it. Deja watches it pass. She thinks about something Steph wrote in the note, inside the green notebook, the 8 lines. The third line specifically, which she has read more times than any other line in any document she has ever been given. The path doesn't disappear just because you've already crossed it. She thinks, it stays there. It marks the place. It says, someone came this way. Someone made it across. She holds the notebook. The bus keeps moving. They arrive at 5:52 p.m. The center on 81st Avenue is lit up from within. Warm light through the windows. The kind that makes a building look inhabited in the fullest sense. Not just occupied, but alive. There are people arriving. Families, couples, individuals, people who have been part of this community for years, and people who found out about tonight through the Foundation's newsletter and showed up because something in the description of the event made them feel that they should be there. A volunteer holds the door. Priya walks in first, because Priya always walks through doors first, as a matter of personal policy. Marcus follows, looking around the room with the careful casualness of someone trying not to seem impressed. Cheryl comes through, Tamara appearing immediately to help with the door in the practiced way of someone who has thought about every detail. Deja comes last. She stands in the doorway for one moment, just one. She looks at the room, the chairs filling, the warm light, the children's drawings still on the walls from the afternoon program, the long tables pushed to the sides. She looks at the mural through the far window, the one she could see from outside, the children reaching upward. She looks at the second row. A man in a plain navy blazer is already seated, talking quietly to the woman beside him. He has his head turned away. He has not seen her yet. Tamara appears at Deja's shoulder. She says, quietly, "Ready?" Deja looks at the room for one more moment. She thinks about Eloise, who stood where they could see her. She thinks about Marcus with his granola bar, saying they just needed to see someone do it first. She thinks about the piece of paper and the green notebook and the 19 pages with the cracked spine and the ink smear on her hand. She thinks about all the Marcuses and Leelas who walked out of buildings and kept walking and found something better and sent their back pay to their mothers and asked about succulents and were, right now, somewhere in this city, doing the unfilmed version of everything. She steps through the door. She says, "I've been ready for a while." At 6:04 p.m., 26 minutes before the program begins, something happens that nobody in the room expects. A woman walks through the door. She is 31 years old. She is wearing a gray coat. She has a small notebook in her hand, not the composition kind, not the green hardcover kind. A reporter's notebook, the spiral top kind, the kind that fits in a jacket pocket. Her name is Lila Okonkwo. She came because Greta told her about the event. Greta, who keeps in touch, who texted a photograph on a Sunday afternoon, who said, "There's a young woman speaking tonight in Oakland. You should hear what she has to say." Lila almost did not come. She is not someone who goes to things. She is someone who grows plants and asks precise questions and trusts the long game. Rooms full of people and emotions and the weight of shared experience are not her natural habitat. But she came. She stands near the back, close to the wall, in the way of someone who has chosen the position that allows for the quickest exit if needed. She looks at the room. She looks at the second row. She looks at the man in the navy blazer. She does not know who he is. She looks at the front of the room, where a young woman in a dark green jacket is talking to a foundation staff member holding a green notebook, listening with the focused attention of someone who is saving their energy for the thing that comes next. Lila watches her. She opens her own small notebook. At the top of a clean page, she writes one word. Just one. And that word, that single word that Lila Okonkwo writes in a reporter's notebook in the back of a room in East Oakland at 6:04 p.m. on a Thursday in November 2023, is the last piece of this story that nobody knows yet. It will not be revealed until Deja speaks, until Deja says the thing Steph said, until the room goes quiet in the way that only happens when a truth lands exactly where it was always meant to land. 6 minutes. The program begins in 22 minutes. But the story, the real story, the one that started not on October 24th but long before, in all the ordinary days that preceded it, in the 2 buses and the coffee stain and the cracker aisle and the pharmacy counter and the midnight document and the granola bar wrapper, that story is already complete. It has been complete for a while. The room just needed to catch up. The room fills completely by 6:22 p.m. Every chair is taken. People stand along the back wall, not because Tamara miscounted, but because word traveled in the final days in the specific, organic way that word travels in tight communities. One person told another person who told 3 more, and those 3 told their neighbors and their sisters, and the woman at the bus stop and the man at the corner store, who has watched the light on 81st Avenue stay on past 9 o'clock for 4 years, and who decided, on this particular Thursday, that he wanted to finally see what the inside of that building looks like when it is full. He is standing near the back, next to the tamale cart woman, who closed early tonight for the first time in 6 months because something told her to. Lila Okonkwo is still near the wall. Her gray coat is folded over her arm now. Her small notebook is open. The one word at the top of the page is still the only word on the page. She has not written anything else. Not because nothing has happened, but because she is waiting. She does not know what she is waiting for exactly. She will know it when it arrives. Priya has claimed a seat in the 3rd row and is already drawing. Not Deja yet, because Deja is not on the stage yet. So Priya is drawing the room itself. The chairs, the light, the people, a version of the mural she can see through the far window, all of it rendered in crayon, with the joyful inaccuracy of a 9-year-old who draws what she feels rather than what she sees. Marcus is beside her, sitting very straight in the way of someone who decided, on the bus, that tonight was a sitting straight occasion. His headphones are in his jacket pocket. He is present in a way that costs 12-year-olds something, fully, without the protective layer of detachment that adolescence usually requires. Cheryl is at the end of the row, her wheelchair folded beside her because she is having a standing night, or rather, a sitting in a regular chair night, which is its own kind of victory. She is holding her hands in her lap. She is very still. She has the expression of a woman who has been waiting for this moment for longer than tonight, longer than 3 weeks, longer than 2.5 years of 2 buses and a coffee stain and a Warriors mug with a faded logo. She has been waiting for this since Deja was 7 years old and came home from school and told Cheryl, with total seriousness, that a boy in her class said her answer was wrong when it was right, and Cheryl said, "Were you right?" And Deja said, "Yes." And Cheryl said, "Then hold on to that. Don't let the wrong voices talk louder than the right answer." She has been waiting since then. In the second row, Steph Curry sits with Ayesha's hand on his arm and his eyes on the front of the room. He is wearing the plain navy blazer. No Warriors gear, no branding, nothing that says, "Look at me," because tonight is specifically and deliberately not about being looked at. Ayesha is in a simple black top, her hair back, her attention complete and warm. They have been here since 6:10. They came in through the side entrance because Tamara arranged it, not for secrecy, but for simplicity. Not every arrival needs to be an announcement. Several people recognized Steph when he came in. The recognition moved through the room in a whisper rather than a shout. Quiet acknowledgement, a few nods, a child in the 4th row who tugged her father's sleeve and received a nod in return and then sat back and said nothing else, because somehow the room had already established, without anyone announcing it, that tonight was not about who was watching. Tonight was about what was being said. At 6:31 p.m., Tamara Wells walks to the front of the room. She does not use a microphone. The room is full, but not large enough to need one, and there is something right about the human scale of her voice, about words that require the room to be quiet, to hear them, rather than words that fill the room regardless. She says, "Thank you for being here. Every person in this room is here because they care about something, about this community, about what it means to feed a child and sit beside them, and make sure they know that the world has made room for them." She pauses. Tonight we are going to hear some stories. Real ones. Not the kind that come with music and graphics. The kind that happen in kitchens and on buses, and at registers in stores, and in the dark, when no one is watching. She looks at the room. Those are the only stories that have ever actually mattered. She introduces the first speaker, a man named Theodore, 58 years old, who has been bringing his 2 grandchildren to the center every weekday since his daughter went into a treatment program 18 months ago. Theodore speaks for 7 minutes in the plain, direct language of a man who has decided that his life is not something to be ashamed of. He talks about the morning his granddaughter got her first library card at the center's reading room. He talks about how she slept with it under her pillow for a week. The room is very quiet while he speaks. He finishes. He sits down. The second speaker is a woman named Caroline, who taught 2nd grade at a nearby school for 19 years before retiring. She brings her voice to the room the way former teachers always do, with the particular authority of someone who has spent 2 decades making sure that every child in a room feels seen. She talks about the reading program. She talks about a boy in her class who could not read at grade level, and who, after 3 months of after-school sessions at the center, read an entire chapter book aloud to the class, and then looked up with the expression that she says, and the room believes her completely, "She got into teaching to see." She cries once, briefly. She continues. She finishes. She sits down. The third speaker is the 2nd grade teacher, a young woman named Brianna, who has been bringing her class to the center since 2021. She talks fast and warmly, with the energy of someone who is enthusiastic about everything, and has decided to stop apologizing for it. She talks about a child who refused to eat anything green, until a volunteer at the center grew chard in the garden plot out back and let the children harvest it themselves. And after that, the child ate chard exclusively for 2 weeks, to everyone's exhaustion and delight. Laughter moves through the room. Real laughter. Brianna finishes. She sits down. Tamara returns to the front. She says, "Our final speaker tonight is someone who 3 weeks ago was doing her job at a register in a store 6 miles from here. She was doing it well. She was doing it with the specific, quiet excellence that most of us practice every day, without recognition, without expectation of recognition. What happened to her on October 24th was not fair. What happened after was unexpected. What she has done with both of those things, the unfair part and the unexpected part, is what she is going to share with you tonight." She looks at the back of the room. She says, "Deja Simmons." Deja walks from the back of the room to the front. This takes approximately 20 seconds. In those 20 seconds, the room does something rooms rarely do. It holds itself. Not tense, not the tight, anxious quiet of anticipation, but held, like a breath taken not out of fear, but out of readiness. Like 200 people simultaneously deciding to be present. Deja reaches the front. She turns around. She looks at the room. She has looked at many things in her life. She has looked at 2 buses in the early morning. She has looked at a coffee stain on a sleeve. She has looked at a lanyard in her hands, and at a door getting closer, and at a stranger who said her name like it mattered. She has looked at a refrigerator drawing, and a cracked spine notebook, and a green hardcover one. She has looked at the faces of people who needed her to remember something about them. Crackers, granddaughters, a small boy who looked at snacks. She has never looked at 200 people looking back. She takes one breath. She opens the green notebook. She says, "I want to start with something a 12-year-old told me this morning over a granola bar." In the 3rd row, Marcus looks immediately and deeply at the floor. Deja says, he said, "People want to turn around. Most people, when they see something wrong, want to do something. They just don't know they're allowed to. They need to see someone do it first." She pauses. She says, "I have been thinking about that all day, and I think he is right. And I think it changes the story that everyone has been telling about October 24th. She looks at the room. She says, "Everyone keeps saying that Steph Curry saved my job. And he did. He asked the right question in the right room at the right time, and I am genuinely grateful for that. More than I know how to say in a way that doesn't sound like a greeting card." A small breath of laughter from the room. But here is the thing. Here is what nobody's clip was long enough to show. She looks down at the green notebook. She reads. She reads for 11 minutes. Not all 19 pages, the selected passages she chose, the ones she marked in pencil during the night and the morning, the places where the truth is most concentrated. She reads about the 43 seconds. She reads about putting the lanyard down. Not just the action, but the decision behind it. The choice to make it careful and deliberate, to not throw it, to not let the moment take her dignity along with her job. She reads about the word Gerald used, and the silence of the line, and her own complicated, hard-earned understanding of that silence. She reads, "I am not angry at the people who said nothing. I understand that silence. I have been that silence. We have all been in a line somewhere, holding our basket, telling ourselves it is not our place. The moment is always passing. The question is what we do before it goes." She pauses. She turns a page. She reads about her mother, about the 2 buses, about the essay at 1:58 a.m., about what it means to hold yourself together in public when your private life is a constant, exhausting act of holding. She reads about the drawer of the kitchen, and the refrigerator, and the figure with long arms, and the 9-year-old who labeled her "my sister who works hard," and how that label, small and purple and crayon-smeared, has been the truest description of her anyone has ever given. In the 3rd row, Priya looks up from her drawing. She looks at Deja. Her mouth opens slightly. She does not know her drawing is in the story. She did not know she was in the story. She is 9 years old, and she is in the story, and the understanding of this moves across her face like light moving across water. Slow, then all at once. She does not say anything. She holds her crayon. She listens. Deja reads about what she does not have a name for. The feeling she has been circling since October 24th. The thing that sits underneath the viral moment, and the green notebook, and the job offer, and all of it. She reads slowly here, because she wrote this part last, the part Marcus made possible, and she wants to give it room. She reads, "Most of the time, dignity doesn't trend. Most of the time, nobody turns around. You put the lanyard down and you walk out, and the store keeps going, and the world keeps going, and you get on a bus, and you go home, and you figure out how to get up the next day and try again. And that ordinary, invisible, uncelebrated trying is the bravest thing most people ever do. Not because it is dramatic, because it isn't, because it happens in the dark, without applause, without a famous face in the aisle. It happens because people like us don't have the option of not happening." She stops. The room is so quiet that the sound of the building, the hum that every building has, the breath of it, is audible. She says, off the page now, in her own voice without the notebook, "I want to say something about Marcus Reyes and Lila Okonkwo." The room does not know these names. She tells them. She tells them briefly and plainly. Not their full stories. Those belong to Marcus and Lila themselves. But the shape of it. 2 people. Same store. Different Tuesdays. No cameras. No famous face at the end of the aisle. She says, they walked out too. They put their things down, and they walked out, and the world did not make a video about it. She pauses. And they are the reason I am standing here. Not because of what happened to them, but because of what they did after. Marcus found something better. He sent his back pay to his mother. Lila asked about a plant she left behind. They kept going. They kept being who they were, even after the place that was supposed to see them failed to. She looks at the room. She says, "That is not a small thing. That is everything." In the back of the room, Lila Okonkwo is very still. She has her pen on the page of her small notebook. She does not write anything for a long moment. Then she writes one more word beneath the first one. 2 words now. She looks at them. Her jaw tightens in the way of someone who is deciding not to cry in a room full of people, and is winning that decision by the narrowest possible margin. Deja closes the green notebook. The room understands, from this gesture, that she is moving toward the end, not rushing, just arriving. The way you arrive somewhere after a long journey, not with relief exactly, but with the specific satisfaction of a distance completed. She says, 3 weeks ago, a man I had never met walked into a store and saw something that was wrong and turned around and asked a question. I have been asked, approximately 10,000 times since then, what he said to me at the end. The quiet part. The part the cameras did not catch. She looks at the second row. Steph Curry is looking at her. His face is the face of someone who has given something away and is watching to see where it lands. Not anxious. He is not an anxious person, but present. Completely, fully present in the way of someone who cares very much about this specific moment and is allowing himself to care. Aisha has her hand on his arm still. She has not moved it. Deja says, "He held my hand for a second when he shook it, and then he said, 'Quiet, just for me.' In the middle of all that noise and applause and people with their phones out, he said," she takes a breath. She says it. She says, "You're going to remember today for the rest of your life. Make sure you remember it right. This didn't happen because I walked in. This happened because you held your head up and put that lanyard down like it meant something. That was yours. That was you. I just asked the question." The silence that follows is the longest silence the room has held all evening. It is not empty silence. It is the silence of a room absorbing something, the way ground absorbs rain, taking it in, making room for it, being changed by it, at the molecular level, in ways that will not be visible until later, until things begin to grow. Then a sound begins. It begins in the third row, with a 12-year-old boy who puts both hands together before he has decided to. The same involuntary, full-body yes that Jordan the teenager gave in a Walmart 3 weeks ago. It begins with Marcus Simmons, and it moves. To Priya, who claps with her crayons still in her hand. To Cheryl, who brings her hands together slowly and deliberately, with the dignity of a woman marking a moment she will carry for the rest of her life. To Theodore, to Caroline, to Brianna, to the man from the corner store, to the tamale cart woman, to the people standing along the back wall, to Leela Okonkwo, who puts her pen in her coat pocket and brings both hands together and closes her eyes for one moment, just one, and then opens them and keeps clapping. The room fills with it. Not the spectacular applause of arenas and award shows, not the performed kind, not the kind that is also about the person applauding, the simple kind, the true kind, the kind that means, we heard you, we were here, this mattered. Steph Curry claps twice, then he stops and is still. His jaw is doing something. His eyes are doing something. He looks at the ceiling once, the specific gesture of someone who is not going to cry in a room full of people, but needs a moment with the ceiling. Aisha watches him. She says nothing. She does not need to. After. The word after in a story like this carries its own weight. After is where the real things happen. The things that do not make it into the outline chapters. The things that exist in the space between the last page and the rest of the person's life. Here is some of what happens after. Tamara introduces Deja to Priscilla Okafor, the journalist from the Chronicle, who has been sitting in the 6th row with a spiral-top notebook and has not used it once because she could not bring herself to write while Deja was reading. She shakes Deja's hand and says, "I want to write about Marcus and Lila, with their permission, with yours. The whole story, not the 16 seconds, the whole of it." She pauses. "I think people need to read about what happened in the dark." Deja says, "Talk to Marcus and Lila first. It's their story first." Priscilla nods. She says, "I know. That's why I'm here." She moves toward the back of the room, toward the woman in the gray coat, who has been standing near the wall all evening, who has 2 words written in a small notebook, who grows things on windowsills and trusts the long game. What happens when Priscilla Okafor and Lila Okonkwo begin talking in the back of a room in East Oakland on a Thursday evening in November 2023 will take 3 months to fully unfold. 3 months of conversations and verification and careful, respectful journalism, and will result in a story published in the San Francisco Chronicle on February 12, 2024, under the headline, "The Workers the Camera Missed." The story will name Marcus Reyes and Leela Okonkwo. It will name Greta. It will describe, in plain and careful language, the corrected inventory entry and the succulent and the 12 words of Tagalog, and the back pay sent to a mother in Richmond. It will be the most read Chronicle story of the first quarter of 2024. It will win a Regional Journalism Award. Priscilla will dedicate the award, in her acceptance speech, to the people who kept going without applause. Raymond, the retired postal worker from the Cracker Aisle, does not attend the event. He does not know about it. He is home on Thursday evenings, watching the news with a low-sodium dinner, and his cat, a gray tabby named Jerome. But on the following Tuesday, he comes to the Walmart at his usual time. He goes to Register 7. Deja is there. He puts his crackers on the belt. He says, "I saw the video. A while back, everybody did." He pauses. "I was there that day, you know. I was at the end of the aisle." Deja looks at him. He says, "I didn't say anything. I've been thinking about that since October." She says, "Raymond." He says, I should have said something. I know I should have. I was standing right there. He looks at his crackers on the belt. I'm sorry, Deja. She is quiet for a moment. She thinks about what she wrote, about the silence in the line, about understanding it without anger, about the question of what we do before the moment passes. She says, "You're here now." He looks up. She says, "You came back to the same register. You said the thing out loud. That counts." He says, "Does it?" She says, "I think so. I'm still figuring out the math on it, but I think so." He nods. She scans his crackers. She puts them in a separate bag from his other items, the way she always does, the way she has always known to do. She says, "Have a good one, Raymond." He picks up his bags. He says, "You too, Deja girl." He stops. He says, "My daughter used to call you that, in her head. She described you to me once, the cashier who remembers. She called you Deja girl. I never told you that." Deja looks at him. He says, "She passed. 2 years ago. She used to come here every week." He clears his throat with the precision of someone managing something large in a small container. "She would have liked tonight, I think, the things you said." Deja does not say "I'm sorry," because she has learned that those 2 words, however genuine, are sometimes too small for the space they are asked to fill. She says, "Tell me her name." He says, "Vivian." She says, "Vivian." She holds it for a moment. She had good taste. Raymond looks at her. His eyes are full. He nods once. He picks up his bags. He walks toward the exit. He does not look back. Some moments are complete, facing forward. Dale Hutchins meets with the regional director on Friday morning. The meeting lasts 2 hours and 19 minutes. He walks out of it with his job intact. A formal acknowledgement of the process failures in the Marcus and Lila cases entered into the district record, and an agreement to work with HR on a new complaint handling framework, one that requires a manager to document both sides of a complaint before any employment action is taken, one that gives employees what they were never given, the right to be heard before the decision is made. The framework will take 8 months to develop fully. It will be piloted in 3 stores. One of those stores will be on Shellmound Street in Emeryville. Dale will not be celebrated for this. There will be no video, no trending topic, no applause in a warm room. He will sit in meetings and write documents and have uncomfortable conversations and make the same argument, repeatedly, to people who would prefer a simpler path. And he will make it because he has 11 pages on a work computer that remind him what the alternative looks like. It is slow work. It is unglamorous work. It is the only work that actually changes things. Steph Curry finds Deja after the event. Not immediately. He waits. He talks to Tamara and to Theodore, and to the second-grade teacher, who is still glowing with the energy of someone who just witnessed something they will describe for years. He talks to a child who wants to know if he can really shoot from half-court, and answers with absolute seriousness. Only if you practice every single day, and some days even then. When the room has thinned to 20 people, he walks over to where Deja is standing with her family. He shakes Cheryl's hand and says something that makes Cheryl look away and compose herself. He crouches down to Priya's level and asks to see what she has been drawing all evening. Priya shows him. It is a full page. The room, the people, Deja at the front in the dark green jacket, and in the corner, small but distinct, a figure in a navy blazer in the second row. Priya has drawn Steph with a basketball in one hand, because she felt it was important to clarify his profession. Steph looks at the drawing for a long time. He says, "Can I have this?" Priya says, "It will cost you." He says, "What's the price?" Priya says, "You have to teach Marcus to shoot a 3. Marcus, who has been trying to look like he was not listening, spins around. Steph looks at Marcus. He says, "Deal." Marcus opens his mouth, closes it, says with enormous effort at composure, "Cool. Yeah, whatever. That's fine." Steph stands up. He looks at Deja. He says, "You told it right. She says, "I tried to." He says, "You did more than try." He pauses. "What you said about Marcus Reyes and Lila, that was the most important part of the night." She says, "My brother helped." Steph glances at Marcus, who is now attempting to make himself invisible near the wall. He says, "Smart kid." Deja says, "He knows." "Don't tell him." On the bus home, the Simmons family is quiet, in the way of people who have been somewhere large and are still carrying it. Priya falls asleep against Cheryl's arm by the third stop. Marcus looks out the window. Deja holds the green notebook. She does not open it. She just holds it, the way she held the piece of paper in her pocket on the bus home 3 weeks ago, the night of the Tuesday, held it pressed against her chest, like something that might fly away if she loosened her grip. Marcus says, without looking away from the window, "What did the lady in the gray coat write in her notebook?" Deja looks at him. She says, "I don't know. I didn't see." He says, "I did. From the third row. I was watching her when you were talking." Deja says, "What was it?" Marcus is quiet for a moment. He says, "2 words. I couldn't see the second one clearly. But the first one." He stops. He looks at his sister. "The first word was us." Deja looks at him. She thinks about Lila Okonkwo, standing near the wall in her gray coat, with 2 words in a small notebook. She thinks about what the second word might be. She thinks about a plant on a pharmacy counter still being watered every Monday. About back pay sent to a mother. About a 12-year-old who figured it out before breakfast. About all the people who kept going when going was the only option, and found, eventually, that the keeping was its own kind of arrival. She looks out the window. The city moves past. A streetlight. A closed barber shop. The church with the painted mural. Dark now. The woman with wide arms visible only in outline. The shape of her. The gesture of her. Still there in the dark. Still reaching. Here is what is true. Steph Curry is the greatest shooter in the history of basketball. He holds the record. He has the rings. He changed the game in ways that will be written about and argued about and taught in coaching clinics for as long as the sport exists. These things are true, and they matter, and they are his. And he walked into a Walmart to buy birthday candles, and he turned around, and he asked a question. And the asking cost him something. Time, routine, the careful pre-game calibration of a professional athlete. And he paid it without calculation, without performance, without the particular self-consciousness of someone who knows they are being watched. He paid it because the moment required it, and he was there, and the moment does not wait. But here is the other thing that is true. Deja Simmons put a lanyard on a belt like it meant something. And it did. It meant, I know who I am. Even now. Especially now. It meant, you can take the job, but you cannot take the thing underneath the job. The thing that showed up before the job existed, and will be here after the job ends. It meant, I am a person. I am a full, specific, irreplaceable, walking through the world person. And the 43 seconds and the word and the silence of the line have not changed that. And the next bus will not change that. And the next morning will not change that. That is what she set down on the belt. That is what she picked back up. And here is the last true thing. The thing this story has been building toward from the first sentence. From the ordinary Tuesday. From the ordinary store. From the ordinary woman in an ordinary uniform, doing an ordinary job with extraordinary care. Nobody gave Deja Simmons her dignity. She had it the whole time. Someone just finally stopped to say, I see it. I see you. This is yours. And she said, I know. And she went back to work. Lila Okonkwo's 2 words, written in a small notebook in the back of a room in East Oakland on a Thursday evening in November 2023, are never publicly confirmed. But Marcus Simmons, 12 years old, headphones around his neck, looking from the third row with the clear eyes of someone who has not yet learned to look away from the things that matter, He saw them. Us. And the second word, the one he could not quite read from the third row, the one that completed Leela's quiet sentence in the back of a full room, while Deja spoke about lanyard and dignity and the ordinary bravery of people who do not have the option of not happening. The second word, the one that Leela wrote beneath the first, the one that made her jaw tighten and her eyes close for one moment before she kept clapping. The second word was always. Us. Always. The room just needed to catch up, and now it has. And that is the full story. A regular Tuesday. A young woman who held her head up when it would have been so easy to let it drop. A stranger who turned around when everyone else looked away. And a quiet moment at a register that reminded the whole world what it looks like when one person decides that what is happening in front of them actually matters. Before you go, drop a comment right now and tell me where you are watching from. It could be New York or Nigeria, London or Los Angeles, a small town or a big city. I want to know. Because people who care about stories like this one are everywhere, and I love seeing just how far this community reaches. If this story moved you even a little, if it made you think about the Dejas in your own life, the people who show up every single day without applause, doing everything right while the world looks the other way, hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it tells the world that kindness is worth paying attention to. And if you believe that the right story, told the right way, can actually change how people treat each other, subscribe to this channel. Every single video we make is built around that belief. We find the moments that matter, the ones that happen quietly, the ones that almost nobody saw, and we make sure they are heard. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. That says something about you. Now go be the person who turns around,